Chapter 321 Silently, white clouds gathered over the Marine headquarters, obscuring their vision. And with the passage of time, the originally white clouds became pitch black, and thunder flashed from time to time. No one has noticed all of this. After all, the weather in the New World is unpredictable. One moment, the sky is hanging in the air, and the next moment is wind and rain. One of the biggest dangers is the indistinguishable weather. The past 3 months, Sengoku has taken precautions and has secretly moved a few marine elites to the Great Route. It can be said that the marine headquarters in the New World is completely an empty shell. From this, it can be seen that Sengoku's decision, after all, if he did something wrong, he must bear the consequences. Of course, there are radicals in marine who are very opposed to it, but under Sengoku's toughness, they can only follow orders. After all, it is not Sengoku that caused the current consequences, but the garbage on the Holy Land. For this reason, Sengoku's prestige is not nothing to lose. Becoming a marshal for so many years, although Sengoku's majesty has increased and decreased, it has increased far more than decreased. For this reason, Sengoku's words are still full of majesty in marine. As always, Sengoku handles things in his own office, and for the past 3 months, Sengoku has no intention of repairing this place. Only thing that makes Sengoku and Marines unwilling is that all these years of hard work in the New World have been wasted and in vain. Sengoku, I think that guy's revenge should come. Pushing open the door, Crane entered Sengoku's office with a solemn expression. Sengoku, who was processing the file, stopped the quill, a little puzzled. Come out and see. His heart sank, and Sengoku followed behind the Crane and walked out of the office. In an instant, his face became heavy. Sengoku, your decision is correct. Wearing the Marine Vice Admiral coat, Garp looked up at the thundering sky with a serious look. At the beginning, when Sengoku said to give up the New World base, many Marines objected, but under Sengoku's insistent order, they were not allowed to carry out the order. Until now, when Marine felt the shock from the sky, they realized that Sengoku was how wise. The guy endured it for 3 months, and finally did it. Calm face, Sengoku sighed as he looked at the boundless dark clouds of thunder in the sky and the ebb and flow of the sea. How many Marines do we have left to evacuate? Head, Sengoku looked at the Crane and asked. It's almost been evacuated, only our old guys are left. He smiled bitterly. After 3 consecutive months of transfer, he had already evacuated some important things to Marineford. It's a pity, our efforts over the years have been in vain. It can be said that we have lost in a mess. It is estimated that tomorrow's newspapers all over the world will be saying that our Marine was kicked out of the New World by the First Emperor pirates. One wrong step, now we are indeed not the opponents of the First Emperor pirates, we can only return to the Great Route and make plans. Helpless, no one can understand the hurt in Sengoku's heart. The originally good situation was just destroyed by the group of garbage on the Holy Land, let alone feel aggrieved. Marshal, what are we going to do now? Ryokugyu opened his mouth and asked. Wait, during this time, I haven't received the news that the First Emperor pirates have dispatched troops on a large scale. Judging from the situation, the bastard should not bring many people. If there is a chance, I can make that guy lose something. Is it really possible? Kizaru was very indifferent, leaning against the wall, his spirit was not very good. Of course, it would be even better if the First Emperor himself could be kept. Ryokugyu's eyes flashed a gloomy look. I'll give it my all. Kuzan said indifferently, and looked at the sky first, because there, a few tyrannical breaths were rapidly approaching. There was no sound, the thunder slashed down, and in the darkness, several figures completely appeared in the eyes of Sengoku and the others. The head was the man who made Sengoku grit his teeth. Standing in the air, Chinluo's expression was indifferent, he swept the ground casually, his eyes narrowed, and he set his eyes on Sengoku, showing a sneer. Because Chinluo discovered that the entire Marine headquarters had already been empty, leaving only some irrelevant Marines. That is to say, the current Marine headquarters is completely an empty shell. Looking at Chin Luo and his party, the expressions of Sengoku and others became a little more cautious. Chin Luo, only Nami, Kuzan, Perona let them wait with dignity, and even Sun Wukong, Hitsugaya Toshiro, Sun Wukong, and many supernovas were mentioned. In front of this lineup, Jinbei seemed a little weak. However, the ones with the least sense of existence at the scene are probably Zeus and Prometheus. After all, they are completely used as leg strength now, and everyone is standing on their backs. As Marine acting like a tortoise. It's really disappointing to run away without saying hello. Flying away from Zeus, Nami stood in midair with a sarcastic expression on her face. Nami's mockery, Kizaru and the others' faces turned ashen, but they didn't answer. Contrary to the calmness of Kizaru and the others, some Marines who were left at the Marine headquarters became flustered. After all, these people in front of them are all big shots. With their marshals and admiral, can they resist? What are you doing standing here? Marines below Vice Admiral, all evacuate. In the crowd, Onagumo and Yamakaji stood together and quickly announced the order. Yes, Onagumo Quasi-Admiral, Yamakaji Vice Admiral, responded, slowly starting. A few Marines, all began to withdraw. Ellipsis 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 ellipsis. Yamakaji, you go too. Onagumo said looking up. Onagumo, what are you doing? Yamakaji's expression was serious. Looking at this colleague who had a good relationship, he couldn't help but mention it. If I stay, I may be able to hold back the opponent's combat power and try to create more time for you. You should hurry up and retreat with everyone. Without waiting for Yamakaji to answer, Onagumo stepped directly on the moon step, landed beside Kuzan, and looked up at Chin Luo. Nami, do it. Sengoku and the others indifferently. Chin Luo didn't even have any interest in speaking, and directly issued an attack order. Justice is always written by the victor, the strong eat the weak, the victor is the king and the loser is the thief. This is the eternal truth. Can't wait. Nami's body began to glow with golden-yellow electric light. At the same time, Zeus had already disappeared into the clouds. In an instant, lightning flashed, and the whole sky flickered and darkened, and a despairing breath spread. Boom, crack, underscore. Falling down, countless thunder beams fell endlessly towards the entire Marine headquarters. In an instant, the ground burst, the fire soared into the sky, and an aura of destruction rippling out. The fiery breath made the faces of Sengoku and the others flash on and off, but everyone's faces were full of anger. However, following closely behind, Chin Luo's actions made Sengoku and the others annoyed, completely paled. Raised one hand and pressed it violently, silently, as if nothing had happened, but in the eyes of Kizaru and others, this was undoubtedly a life reminder. 2. Chapter 322 _ This bastard, he wants to ruin this place. Clenched his fist tightly, Garp's blue veins twisted, and when he saw Chin Luo's movements, he knew what was going to happen. After all, this has happened several times. Don't fight, retreat whenever you get the chance. Sengoku's expression was solemn. He knew that it would take time before the sun came, so before that, they had to leave here, otherwise, they would have to sink to the bottom of the sea with this island. As for the civilians who haven't completely evacuated, it's not something Sengoku can think about now. After all, no matter how much he evacuates, it's impossible to evacuate everyone on the island. For this reason, the fate of these people is already predictable. But Marshal, there are still many residents on the island who have not been evacuated. Sengoku's order made Kuzan think he heard it wrong. You must know that there are still many people on the island, so are they going to abandon it like this? Kuzan, now is an emergency, that madman is here to vent, we must evacuate before the sun comes, otherwise the consequences will be unimaginable. Sengoku frowned, there was nothing else he could do now. No one is strong in the situation, and they can only avoid its edge first. Kuzan was silent, but his inner struggle made him grit his teeth and clench his fists. This was not the justice he wanted. He thought that he could change Marine's style, but now, Kuzan has come to understand the reality. After all, even Martial Marine is like this. How could Kuzan be able to change it by himself? Kuzan the most was that no one stood up against it, or even offered an opinion. What does this represent? It represents that even Marine hero Garp has acquiesced. This is justice, the justice that he has always wanted to change. From beginning to end, Marine's justice has been rotten, and there is only one way to reawaken justice, and that is to break and stand, and only destruction can bring new life. When Akainu was still there, he was at tit for tat with him and disagreed. Akainu was dead. Kuzan tried his best to change, and set himself a goal, which is to change from Marine first. However, after so many years, the results are so ridiculous. Self-mockery began to appear on the silent face. Kuzan closed his eyes, and his heart was full of disappointment. Perhaps the person he admired left Marine because of this. Zephyr Admiral. The sky was filled with darkness, and a beam of thunderlight slammed into Sengoku and the others. The violent force directly turned the entire building into ruins. The battle is instantly stimulated. Pick your own favorite players. Sengoku and the others scattered in all directions. Chinluo squinted and said something sensible. Garp is handed to me. Words drifted in the air, and Fujitora disappeared, staring at the strongest Garp. Bastard. That guy. Dark-faced, Perona almost yelled because Garp was also her target. No other choice. Perona had no choice but to settle for Kuzan to me. Then there's nothing I can do. Only Kizaru is left. Nami shrugged, not as reactive as Perona. After all, his opponent had been decided from the beginning. The other side's marshal will be handed over to the captain. After all, his status is there. I can only pick the rest. Ryokugyu, I haven't fought yet. Toshiro's eyes were cold, and he was wearing a battle uniform, and charged directly towards Ryokugyu. Oh, Onagumo will be left to me. To be honest, Sun Wukong was a little disappointed. After all, the powerful ones were picked away, and the rest of the two sides were almost all held back. Onagumo who felt the same way as Sun Wukong, because he found that none of the opponent's masters were chasing him. And at the scene, there is another soy sauce, that is Prometheus, not to mention embarrassing, at least Zeus is still controlling thunder in the clouds, and he look on in despair. Prometheus was angry and rushed directly to the evacuated Marine. With no choice, Yamakaji gave the task of retreating to others and chose to stay. As for Chinluo, he had long since disappeared, and immediately collided with Sengoku. The golden light was dazzling, and a golden arm the size of a room pillar blocked it. Accompanied by a dull sound, a long flame of flame appeared, and it was instantly drawn across. The momentum was like overturning the river and the sea, and it was extremely tyrannical. Whoosh! It turned into a streamer and fell straight. In an instant, smoke and dust flew, and a surging wave lifted the surface and formed a collapse. In midair, Chinluo maintained the form of a flaming phoenix and a vermilion bird, with flames burning all over his body. He looked at the big Buddha in the smoke indifferently, and sneered. Once upon a time, I was in the opponent's hands and couldn't even take a move, but now, I can not only stand up to the court, but also suppress it with a backhand. I am not myself anymore. Cough, cough. In the smoke, Sengoku coughed and felt the stinging pain on his right arm. His face was a little heavy, because the other party was far stronger than he thought. This man, I am afraid, has grown to the point where it is difficult to suppress even himself. The times have changed, the other party has become stronger, and he has grown old. Up! King Kong glared. Sengoku looked at the man in the air, clenched his fists, and said that he didn't seem to have fought for a long time. For a time, the two sides looked at each other, and a trace of sparks flashed like lightning. The next moment, the two flew and collided directly. Meteor crashing, golden light dazzling all over his body, Sengoku incarnates as a Buddha, and every move has a powerful force. The two fists collided, and the huge roar was deafening. A shock wave spread between the two, and then a boundless air pressure swayed. Compared to Sengoku's huge fist, Chinluo's fist is undoubtedly small and pitiful. However, at the moment of the confrontation, the tiny fist was powerful and completely suppressed Sengoku. A huge pain came from his right fist, and Sengoku only felt that he was slamming on a giant mountain. The power was immeasurable. A sideways kick, the atmosphere was torn apart. Sengoku gritted his teeth, blocked his left hand in front of him, and with the collision of his flesh, a golden light fell again. Falling rock tumbled, and Sengoku stood up, a trace of blood spilling from his mouth, the red liquid, and the seagull-shaped hat was thrown away directly, looking very embarrassed. In an instant, Chinluo appeared in front of Sengoku, stretched his foot back, and then the entire ground burst, kicking directly into Sengoku's chest, and the whistling air pressure made Sengoku's eyelids jump. Buddha's shock. An emergency. Sengoku crossed his palm and faced Chinluo's right foot, forming a powerful shock wave that poured out over the river. Time stopped, huge ripples meandering, the entire ground collapsed in a second. Sengoku gritted his teeth, and his figure flew out again, smashing through several buildings along the way, and finally lying at the end of the gully. The gravel splashed all over the sky, and Sengoku got up quickly, coughing constantly in his mouth, and the bright red liquid dyed his collar even red. On the other hand, Chinluo, whose figure was slowly hanging in the air, looked at Sengoku with indifference, and his eyes were all looking down. Chapter 323 _ The power of this guy has become stronger again. Wiping the blood from his mouth, Sengoku's eyes were a little grim, because compared to when he was in the war, this guy's strength has increased again. If he was still able to stand up to the court at that time, then now, he can only resist. Sengoku, you are old. The ghostly voice recalled that Sengoku observation haki spread out with all his strength, and without thinking, he lay on the ground. The next moment, there was a sonic boom on the top of his head, and after that, Sengoku's back became a plane. With one kick, countless buildings disappeared, leaving only the smoke and ravines in the sky. However, Sengoku was not without resistance. He clenched his fists, the blue veins on his arms were meandering, and a huge energy surrounded Chinluo, and slammed towards Chinluo. At this moment, time seemed to slow down. Chinluo swept across, and then Sengoku shot, but just in the nick of time, Chinluo pressed down his hands and directly withstood Sengoku's attack. The huge force made Chinluo's body soar, and Sengoku's whole body sank into the ground, and the endless cracks and tears around it turned into a big pit. The flames burned, the ground melted directly, and suddenly, a powerful wall rolled down. Sengoku's complexion changed. He felt as if his body had fallen into a puddle, his pupils shrank, and a barbed spear splashed, making Sengoku feel that he was in danger of death. A terrifying explosion, smoke billowing, Sengoku groaned, and a wound with a version of flesh and blood was exposed on his chest. Sky cannon. Magma exploded, Sengoku disappeared to the ground, and instantly appeared in the sky under Chinluo. Like a maddened king, a shock wave of terror condensed in his right hand, facing Chinluo, and blasted it. Turning his eyes, the golden red flames boiled. Chinluo raised his right foot and stepped on it abruptly. It was visible to the naked eye, and the atmosphere wailed. A vacuum was formed between the two. Thousand hands. Buddha's wrath. The Buddha's light soared into the sky, and a terrifying breath spread from Sengoku. In an instant, countless hands seemed to appear behind Sengoku, densely packed, suppressing Chinluo in all aspects. The huge power was overwhelming. Chinluo's eyes were cold, the whole sky was red, and countless swords, guns, swords and halberds fell, turning into a torrent of weapons. Strangulation continued. Sengoku roared, and the thousand hands in his hands were like sharp cones, constantly hitting swords, spears, swords, and halberds, and appeared in front of Chinluo in the blink of an eye. Go to hell. All the arms folded together. A huge golden impact shook the space. Sengoku looked at Chinluo fiercely, and used all his strength to kill the man in front of him in one fell swoop. The hair was flying. Chinluo raised his head, clenched his fist, the veins on his entire arm were bulging, and the blood vessels continued to meander like earthworms. In the blink of an eye, the sky-high flames condensed and took shape. The wind galloped, the whole sky darkened, and a huge dull explosion, like a thunderbolt, swayed a boundless impact, causing the dark clouds above the two to separate. The ground under their feet collapsed, and even the sea also set off endless waves. Flesh and blood spattered, Chinluo's entire right arm cracked, and wounds of different sizes appeared densely. However, the most frightening thing is that in just a short period of time, Chinluo's right hand has automatically stopped the bleeding, and it is visible to the naked eye that the cracked wound has begun to heal. As if feeling no pain, Chinluo raised his right hand and could even see the blood-red bones inside. And Sengoku, even more unbearable, was directly swept away by Chinluo's power, and even the thousands of hands behind him collapsed, and there was a big mouthful of blood splattered from his blue-black mouth. Flying out, Sengoku stepped on the moon step with difficulty, staggeringly maintaining it in midair. At this moment, the whole atmosphere shook, and Chinluo rushed to Sengoku again. The huge crisis changed the color of the sky, and Sengoku gritted his bloody teeth and disappeared in place. Suddenly, a huge roar resounded in the entire midair, and the brilliance was dazzling and shocking. Basically, Sengoku only has the power to parry. Facing Chinluo's crazy attacks, the scars on his body have become more and more numerous. And what troubled Sengoku the most was the burning temperature and the shock of the conqueror. These two things caused Sengoku's armament to be consumed at an accelerated rate, and the impact of Conqueror continued to suppress Sengoku's mind, causing Sengoku to not be able to exert his full power at all. It is conceivable that Chinluo's Conqueror has reached the point where even a strong man like Sengoku has been affected. Ah! Suddenly, Sengoku's screams sounded in the sky, and along with the blood, an arm fell so conspicuously. The figure moved, Chinluo forcibly tore off Sengoku's left hand and kicked Sengoku's chest. For a time, the whole sky wailed. Sengoku's face turned pale, his eyes turned into meteorites, and he hit the ground heavily. The smoke of gunpowder exploded in an instant, the entire coastline burst, and countless hills stood up, turning into majestic canyons. When the smoke cleared, Sengoku recovered his original body in a gravel pit. His left arm was broken at the shoulder, and the irregular flesh and bone residue could be clearly seen. The blood had already wet the ground, and the collapsed chest made Sengoku's every breath feel like being scratched by a knife, stinging his soul. Standing in the air, looking at Sengoku like a dead dog, Chinluo's eyes were indifferent, and a long spear appeared in his hand, because he wanted to completely deal with Sengoku. In an instant, swiftly passing by, the danger of death once again spread all over Sengoku's body, causing his hair to explode and fall into despair. The bulging eyes were full of bloodshots at the moment. Sengoku lay with one arm in the blood, close at hand, whistling from the sky. The gun of death disappeared in the blink of an eye. Damn! The unwilling anger in my heart roar. Sengoku's chest collapsed, blood was spitting out of his mouth. The eyes, a little tingling, turned out to be eroded by the blood on the forehead. In the blur, the whole world was silent. A big black hand grabbed the barbed spear and forcibly shifted his body, accompanied by a violent function. A tall figure was reflected in Sengoku's eyes. The fluttering white-gray coat is full of righteousness in the sand-filled field, unconsciously, giving people a feeling of peace of mind. Suspended in the air, Chinluo frowned, a little surprised. He didn't expect that after so many years, the two sides would meet in this situation. Empty. The figure slowly descended. Chinluo was indifferent and calmly looked at the tall figure in front of him. Cough. Cough. Air Marshal. Vomited blood. Sengoku's face turned pale, and some couldn't believe that the person who saved his life would be empty. I did inform Gorosei, 5 elders long ago, but what I didn't expect was that this time Gorosei, 5 elders didn't send a CPO, but instead sent the empty one who now controls the entire army. In fact, Gorosei 5 elders had no choice but to do so, because now the CPO organization is worthy of its name, and it has been damaged by nearly 7 or 8. Waiting for people to die, it is estimated that Gorosei 5 elders are too lazy to move. Even, this time Gorosei 5 elders paid blood in order to make sure nothing went wrong. Chapter 324 Yo, isn't this Marine Marshal Sengoku? How can he be so embarrassed? At this moment, behind the crowd, 2 figures appeared out of thin air. One of the yellow-haired men who picked it lightly looked at the miserable Sengoku, showing surprise. Looks like we're not too late. Next to the yellow-haired man is a man who looks very serious and heavy. These 2 people should have come with Sora. Although there is no aura from his body, he feels like a wild beast, which should not be underestimated. Antonio, Barnett. Looking at Huang Mao and the 2, Sengoku's eyelids twitched and his expression became serious. Is this the legendary first emperor? I don't think it's very good. Ignoring Sengoku's surprise, Huang Mao pinched his chin and glanced at Qin Luo provocatively, then turned to look at Sengoku and said disdainfully, "It seems that you are really old, Sengoku." Antonio, stop, this man, very strong. Compared with Huang Mao's frivolity, another man named Barnett is much more stable. Oops, forgot to introduce myself. For Barnett's words, Antonio shrugged. He was tired of hearing these words. On the contrary, he was interested in this first emperor who stirred the sea. Under the lost Antonio, Army Admiral, I have seen the unnamed His Excellency the First Emperor. Walking to Kong, Huang Mao introduced himself. This is Saint Star Barnett, you can call him Saint Star, or make me lost, then, please, the First Emperor, can you give me a face and leave here? Very arrogant, Antonio, whose title was lost, looked at Qin Luo domineeringly, with disdain flashing in his eyes. However, Qin Luo didn't even have the slightest interest in answering this yellow hair, so what about the Army Admiral? It's just a clown jumping on the beam. From beginning to end, his eyes are on Sora. Qin Luo's ignorance and loss made him a little uncomfortable. As an admiral of the army, when had he been slapped like this? Even the commander of the Revolutionary Army would not dare to be so arrogant when he saw him. Is it because he shows up too little, so he is not famous now? But it doesn't matter, as long as he kills the man in front of him, his fame will probably spread all over the sea. Thinking of this, Lost was a little excited, and white mist began to appear around him, full of mystery. Don't act rashly, Diaresis. Looking at the Lost, Admiral of the Holy Star Army beside him, admonished. With a calm face, Qin Luo moved his eyes slightly, looked at Kong flatly, and said aloud, "It seems that the world government is out of luck, it's just rescuing a few old things, and even calling you an old immortal lying in a coffin. Got up and it was a real disappointment." Quote. Dead bird, how did you talk? Didn't your parents teach you how to be a human being? Qin Luo's sarcasm directly angered Huang Mao, and he pointed at Qin Luo contemptuously on the spot, as if you were careful with me. It's hard to imagine that such a light-hearted guy can become an army admiral, even at some point, with a little more power than Marine Admiral. It is said that people with great skills are all monsters with eccentric personalities. Now it seems that there is no problem with this sentence. Having been provoked by this yellow hair many times, Qin Luo's face couldn't help but turn cold. In those eyes, he was looking at Huang Mao like a dead man. The figure slowly faded, silent, and in an instant, Kung Fu stared at the head and shouted, "Lost, be careful." Appearing out of thin air, Huang Mao's pupils shrank, and all the hair on his body exploded, because the man who was originally standing opposite actually appeared in front of his eyes. As if being stared at by the god of death, Lost and felt that his heartbeat was gone. Antonio, elemental. Beside him, Sheng Xing roared, his right fist was like a meteor, rubbing the atmosphere and attacking Qin Luo. Behind him, Kong also turned around and launched an attack on Qin Luo. Boom! The flames shot into the sky, and the violent will was crushed. Two flame figures emerged from Qin Luo's body, directly intercepting Shengxing and Kong. And Qin Luo himself punched Huang Mao. I have to say that those who can become admiral are all capable guys. In an emergency, there is a bang, and the yellow hair directly turns into white mist, spreading in all directions. And Qin Luo's fist, as if hitting a place of nothingness, fell short. Observation hockey, Conqueror radiated past. The whole space thickened directly. Qin Luo disappeared, appeared 10 meters away, and kicked the place where the white mist was surging. On the spot, screams sounded, a mouthful of blood spurted out, and the yellow hair directly exposed itself, moving out on the ground like a cannonball, tearing the ground along the way, leaving a huge gully. With cold eyes, Qin Luo attacked Huang Mao again, and his foot fell from the sky. In the nick of time, Huang Mao showed fear, turned into an element again, and fled to the side. In an instant, the entire ground exploded, and a wave of air lifted the surface and stirred up countless gravel. Diaresis, Shu. A long spear disappeared in an instant. Huang Mao screamed and was nailed to the ground, his right shoulder sizzled, and a barbecue smell wafted directly into the air. A sonic boom occurred, Qin Luo's figure disappeared, and a pair of icy eyes filled the yellow hair nailed to the ground with horror. Boom! A halo spread, lifted the ground, and blew the yellow hair out. The ground exploded quickly, standing empty on the ground, pressing his right fist against Qin Luo's fist. His eyes widened with anger, then his feet sank deep into the ground and moved out. The wind and sand in the sky were blowing constantly, and the sky was smashed by thunder. Qin Luo did a backflip, stood 3 feet off the ground in midair, his long hair danced wildly behind his back, through his fists, and snorted coldly. And Kong stepped on a big pit under his feet, groaned, and blood overflowed from his mouth. At this time, Shengxing also solved Qin Luo's magical transformation of flames, and pulled out the long spear on Huang Mao's Jiao shoulder, looking at Qin Luo with a solemn expression, and his heart was full of astonishment. Shengxing is very clear about the power of Lost, but in the hands of the opponent, he can't take the 4 moves. If Marshal Kong hadn't shot at the end, it is estimated that Lost is now a corpse. He and others seriously underestimated the horror of this man. I once laughed at Marine Admiral Kizaru and the others, but now it seems that the first emperor is not a vain name, far more terrible than they imagined. Cough, cough. Being supported by Shengxing, Huang Mao changed his previous contempt, and his eyes were full of lingering fear and fear. This man is really terrible. The face of Marshal Kong and the 2 army admiral, he even started to do it without a word, and almost killed himself. Huang Mao even began to doubt his own level. Several death hugs just now made his heart beat faster now, and the tingling in his body told him that this was not a dream. Chapter 325 Marshal Kong, are you all right? Shengxing looked at Kong bleeding, and felt a little palpitated. Even Marshal Kong suffered a loss. It's okay. Wiping the blood from his mouth, Sora took a deep breath and looked at Qin Luo vigilantly, in case the other party was shooting. Army Admiral, it's garbage. With his hands vertical, Qin Luo stood tall, looking at the pale yellow hair, his words full of disdain. Huang Mao was in a hurry and was about to speak, but he couldn't stop coughing, and it was full of blood. At this time, the sky, the clouds were broken, and the crimson meteorites, like meteors, spread in large numbers to the entire surrounding. Kuzan. His eyes changed drastically. Sengoku clutched his broken left shoulder and looked at the red sky with a bad premonition. Immediately following, the shock of the crowd was not over yet, but from the horizon, a white light shot up into the sky. Boom, boom. The earth began to tremble, and at the end of the sky, a raging wave, like a shadow, swept over Qin Luo and the others. Qin Luo frowned, flew straight into the air, and stood in midair. Similarly, Kong and others also stepped on the moon step, distanced themselves from Qin Luo, and looked towards the sky, because there, 2 violent figures were moving towards this side. And it's not over, because in different directions, or the thunder rose sharply, and the golden light was dazzling, or the sky was full of ice and snow, and the fierceness was vast. In short, there were several breaths, perhaps sensing the three people in the sky, and they were all approaching. The first to arrive was a golden light, condensed and formed. It was Kizaru, but at this time Kizaru was a little embarrassed. His right face was even more red and swollen. There was blood in his mouth, and his face was a little pale. And behind the golden light, a thunder swept past, filled with powerful conquerors, and finally condensed and formed, standing in midair. Ugly Kizaru, he's really good at escaping. A bit cruel, Nami sneered. In the previous battle, she had been pressing the opponent, but the opponent's evasion ability was really powerful. Even if she used the field, she accidentally let the opponent run away. The blood from his mouth, Kizaru ignored Nami's sarcasm, but his face was a little grim. I have to say that I am not the opponent's opponent. It is clearly the ability of thunder, but it can be constantly transformed into repulsion, gravity, and can also control the field. If I hadn't been vigilant, I would have to explain it here today. This is because Nami has just mastered these extension abilities, and she is not very proficient. After all, she can't chew too much. It is already amazing that Nami can successfully develop these abilities. Otherwise, not CGAC May would not have the strength of the 5 emperors, which means that Kizaru is now facing the 5 emperors, not a so-called heavenly ring. It can also be seen from the side that Kizaru's ability is really strong. If it is said that who is the most difficult to kill in the sea, then it must be Kizaru and Nami. If the two of them want to escape, even if they themselves are not sure, can win. Satirizing Kizaru, Nami turned her eyes to the 4 of Sengoku, and the arrogance in those eyes was stronger than Wangmao. Chin Luo, who are these 3 trash? Chin Luo didn't answer yet. Suddenly, the whole sea was separated, and a sword light swept across several people. The fierce sword energy made everyone's scalp numb. Immediately following, everyone's shoulders sank, as if an invisible Mountai was pressing down on them. Covered in blood, the first person to catch everyone's eyes was Kuzan. At this moment, his body was covered with sword marks, and he was obviously severely injured. And behind him, crossing the sky, Perona maintains the female ghost sword mode, surrounded by boundless sword energy. Her sword pupils are open, and she is looking sharply at everyone. In the senses of everyone, Perona has no breath of life, as if standing in front of them is a sword, a peerless fierce blade that can even split the earth. At the scene, the dazzling breath was violent, causing the entire cloud layer to flow continuously. Obviously, Kuzan was at a disadvantage in Perona's hands and suffered more injuries than Perona. After Kizaru, Kuzan also lost in Perona's hands, which is not good news. Female ghost sword mode disappeared, and Perona's face was a little pale, but the fierce sword stance was always very sharp, and people dared not underestimate it. Crack, knock. Suddenly, in the blank space between the two sides, a pair of big white hands suddenly appeared, tore open the space and stepped out. It was Fujitora. However, Fujitora appearance was a little embarrassed, but even so, he still remained cold. With the appearance of Fujitora, the sky is rushing past at high speed, the whole atmosphere is shaking, and the huge sonic boom sound is deafening. Airflow exploded, revealing a figure. Garp was soaked all over, his face was a little red and swollen, and a mist was steaming from his body, which gave people a very shocking feeling. It seems that Garp also suffered a dark loss in the hands of Fujitora, but Fujitora is not feeling well, the breath in his body has not calmed down, and even there is a trace of blood on the corner of his mouth. Following the overwhelming atmosphere here, Hitsugaya Toshiro and Ryokugyu also rushed over, but to everyone's surprise, Ryokugyu was seriously injured. On the contrary, Hitsugaya Toshiro was pale and his hair was a little messy. The breath is much smoother than that of Ryokugyu. Unable to help, everyone glanced at the white-haired boy. The appearance of these big guys left the last group of Monkey King and Onagumo was beaten by Monkey King. The two sides opened the distance and waited solemnly for a while. Although everyone's faces were full of disdain, their hearts were full of solemnity. Especially Chinluo's side, the number is far less than the other side. Sengoku, Garp, Kizaru, Ryokugyu, Kuzan, Yamakaji, there is time, and the two army admiral of Lost and Sacred Star. Even if Sengoku and Lost are seriously injured now, it does not mean that they have lost their combat power. If the two sides fight again, then Chinluo's side will be at a disadvantage. But even so, up to Chinluo, down to Prometheus, Zeus did not have any fear. On the contrary, everyone's eyes revealed danger. Even strictly calculated, the number of people on both sides is similar. If you take a little risk, maybe you can keep these guys today. For a while, Chinluo narrowed his eyes and planned. On the other hand, Kong's expression was a little hesitant, because he was not sure that he could keep this man. If there was a fight, there would definitely be deaths on both sides. This was not the purpose of this rescue. Admiral characters are lost here, then the Marine will completely collapse, which is not in the interests of the world government. And Chinluo also has some scruples. If he really wants to keep these people, he will definitely suffer losses. After all, this time, Chinluo did not intend to kill Sengoku and others. The main purpose is to kill the other party. Out of the new world. If Kong hadn't come, Chinluo would definitely leave Sengoku and others, but now that Kong has joined, plus two army admirals, to be honest, Chinluo is not sure. The most important thing is that, including Prometheus and Zeus, the number of opponents is far more than his own. Chinluo doesn't think that Zeus and Prometheus can resist the powerhouse of admiral level. So some trouble. Moreover, Chinluo is not sure whether the other party still has support. After all, the world government has ruled for 800 years, and it is impossible that there are only a few CPOs. Chapter 326 Chinluo, do you need to do something? Nami stood beside her with Ziz Thunder in her hands, obviously ready. Even Fujitora clenched the sword in his hand involuntarily. As for Perona, let alone the surrounding space was torn apart by the sword energy. Even Hitsugaya Toshiro, the temperature around him plummeted. Seeing that Fujitora and the others were about to do something, Garp and the others also became alert, and the atmosphere was suppressed to the extreme for a while. Maybe someone will die, are you ready? The flames began to burn. Chinluo looked indifferently, looking at Kong and the others, showing killing intent. Retreating was never his style. You will die if you die, but I'm sure that these guys will go down and be buried with you. After pursing her lips, Perona's eyes were sharp, looking a little crazy. I have no opinion. Fujitora and others also snorted coldly, and even said that they can't wait. Then let's do it. The tyrannical coercion spread. Chinluo was covered in flames and decided to leave these people behind. Compared with Chinluo's unscrupulousness, Sora was a little more shy, and even said that he didn't want to fight here. Hold on. With a serious expression, Kong looked at Chinluo with burning eyes, preventing the situation from drawing swords. Marine will withdraw from the New World, which is in line with your first Emperor's purpose. Don't you really care about their life and death? Do you have to fight for both sides? Although I am old, it shouldn't be a problem to pull one or two backs. Why don't we how about taking a step back? Quote. Sora, the first to admit defeat, chose to take a step back, because compared to the carelessness of these lunatics, he would not be able to sink the boat unless it was a last resort. Ha ha, are you afraid? Chinluo hadn't spoken yet, but Nami was the first to hold back and laughed loudly, her voice full of contempt. However, Chinluo suddenly frowned, and then revealed a strange smile. Seeing Chinluo's penetrating smile, Sengoku couldn't help but his heart skipped a beat, and then he turned around abruptly. Sure enough, the sky was crimson red, and an endless cloud of sun was moving towards here, moving quickly. The premise is that you can live. Crazy infiltrating. Chinluo looked at Sora and the others dangerously, and then nodded to Fujitora, let's go. The atmosphere was torn open, and a door appeared. Nami took a deep look at Sora and the others, then glanced at the approaching sun of destruction, entered the door, and disappeared. Following closely, Perona and Zeus entered, and only Chinluo and Fujitora were left at the scene. I hope you can get out of here alive, it's still a long time to come, old people. After speaking, he ignored Sora and the others' ashen faces, and disappeared directly into the door with Fujitora. Thousands of miles away, the space was torn apart suddenly, and Nami and the others stepped out, not very emotional. After all, this battle was not very comfortable, and it was completely the head of the mouse. You guys wait here a while, Fujitora, go. Standing in the air, everyone could clearly feel the slowly falling sun in the sky. The temperature, order, and demise created chaos at this moment, which was very dangerous. Captain, are you going back? Sun Wukong finished speaking. Chinluo and Fujitora disappeared in front of everyone. Hey, there's a good show to watch now. Nami's pupils turned. VV Isho. Obviously, Chinluo and the others went back and forth to give Kong et al. A blow. How could they return empty-handed in this incident? This is not in line with the idea of this expedition. As for why only Chinluo and Fujitora returned, that's because sometimes it's not good if there are too many people. It was hot, baked, and silent. With Chinluo and the others disappearing, Kong and the others looked at the sun falling from the sky with ashen faces. It was obvious to the naked eye that the sea began to evaporate, and the entire marine headquarters had begun to melt. What to do? With a dignified expression, Armament Haki had already condensed on Onagumo's body, and now he wanted to escape. Except for Kizaru's speed, it was impossible for others to escape. Because this round of the sun is too big, according to the violent energy in it, a medium-sized island is estimated to be directly shattered, and a large island will disintegrate. That lunatic. Covering his left arm, Sengoku had a grim expression on his face, because there is still some life left on the marine headquarters. If the sun is allowed to go down, the final result will be the collapse of the marine headquarters, and the life above will be direct without any accident. Die. Kizaru, you go first with Sengoku and Antonio. Frowning, Sora directly asked Kizaru to take away the severely injured Sengoku and Wangmao first. With Kizaru's speed, he should be able to fall completely in the sun and stay away from this range. As for why Kizaru only brings 2, that's because if there are more, it will affect Kizaru. Marshal Kong, then you guys. Sengoku was a little anxious. I have my own plans, you all go first. Golden light disappeared, and without saying a word, Kizaru directly grabbed Sengoku and disappeared before everyone's eyes, and the rest of the people, except for the Shengxing ticket, were a little heavy. Blue. A phone bug was dialed, and Sora said solemnly, Lord Gorose, 5 elders, we are ready. Close at hand, in the different space, Fujitora and Chinluo couldn't help but squinted as they watched Kong take out the phone bug. In the outside world, Garp and others knew nothing, because at this moment, they all looked at Sora suspiciously. Everyone, grab each other one by one, and Lord Gorose, 5 elders will come to meet us. What? Garp and the others were stunned, while Chinluo, who was in a different dimension, widened his pupils. 0. Huh. In an instant, in front of Sora, an old man in a black suit with curly white hair and a fluffy beard appeared out of nowhere without warning. At the scene, everyone's eyes changed, including Chinluo and Fujitora from different dimensions. The Gorose, 5 elders, who appeared out of thin air, felt a heat wave before he had time to speak, and the violent destructive power was constantly baking him, making him feel the danger of death. On the spot, the old man's face changed greatly, and his whole body became cold. Damn First Emperor, I knew that it should have been strangled in the young shoots. The old man looked at Sora, put his hand on his shoulder, looked at everyone majestically, and said solemnly, everyone is holding on to it. Each other. Everyone is now, if they are not surprised, it is all fake, but the threat from above their heads makes them choose to obey the order. However, just when everyone was going to disappear, an accident happened. The space was torn apart, and it was close at hand. A sharp-edged sword chi slashed heavily on Gorose, 5 elders. PFF'd. The sound of flesh and blood, Gorosei, 5 elders bulged, chest collapsed, and blood spurted straight out. What? The sudden attack shocked everyone. First Emperor. Everyone looked at the thin figure in front of Gorosei, 5 elders, and their eyes were split, because a long spear suddenly appeared in the hands of the madman, facing Gorosei, 5 elders, head, and stabbed it. Creepy, blood-spitting Gorosei, 5 elders with horror, even fantasy, on their faces. 2. Chapter 327 _ Boom. The atmosphere continued to blast, and the spear pierced, flickering with icy cold air, and in an emergency, a grey barrier appeared in front of Gorosei, 5 elders, worthy of resisting the spear. At this time, Garp shot, and punched Chinluo like a meteor. His eyes were cold, and without hesitation, Chinluo also punched back. Onagumo, be careful. Standing with Onagumo, suddenly shouted and pushed Onagumo away, because Fujitora appeared out of nowhere beside them. Gravity field. The ability was activated, Kuzan's face flushed, and the entire space was filled with grey energy, a gravitational field that enveloped everything. Garp Vice Admiral, you go first, I will break later. Kuzan. Ryokugyu wanted to catch Kuzan. It's too late. Above the heads of everyone, the sun has fallen, visible to the naked eye, lost the order to control has begun to collapse. At this time, the Gorosei, 5 elders also took their breath away, and Sora also grabbed the corner of Garp's clothes, and in an instant, silently, everyone disappeared. The scene, only Chinluo and Fujitora were left, as well as the broken Kuzan. Originally, Fujitora's target was Onagumo, but unexpectedly, Kuzan came to the door. Captain. The sun had set over her head, and Fujitora felt like she was about to melt. Watching the Gorosei, 5 elders disappear, Chinluo gritted his teeth and fixed his eyes on Kuzan. In an instant, the violent conqueror impact made Kuzan ignorant and blurred for a moment. But even so, Kuzan shot instinctively, and the frozen age blasted Chinluo. But before he could make a move, Chinluo's sun instantly melted it. Also at this moment, Fujitora shot, and the sword light flashed, directly hitting Kuzan seriously. Chinluo, holding Kuzan's head, went up on his knees, almost suffocating Kuzan on the spot, spitting out blood from his mouth. Let's go. The atmosphere was torn apart, Chinluo pinched the dying Kuzan, walked into the door, and Fujitora followed closely. As the door just disappeared, the entire area suddenly turned red, and then exploded, connecting the world. Colorful, the world is in chaos, an overwhelming air pressure, setting off endless energy, landslides and fissures continue. Boom, boom. The darkness, like a planet exploding, the entire marine headquarters gradually collapsed, disappeared, and sank in the light. Thousands of miles away, the atmosphere split open, Fujitora vomited blood, and fell directly toward the sea, while Chinluo, pinching Kuzan's neck, grabbed Fujitora with one hand. Chinluo. Aware of Chinluo's aura, Nami and the others who were not far away came and looked at the miserable Fujitora, and they were a little surprised. Captain, come up quickly. Zeus instantly became bigger and directly lifted Chinluo and Fujitora. ZZ. And a thunder snake directly bound the dying Kuzan. Previously, even in a different dimension, Chinluo and the three were also impacted. Therefore, Fujitora was so half-dead and fell into a coma, and Kuzan was even more sluggish. Among the three, perhaps only Chinluo felt better, but equally uncomfortable. Master, let the captain drink some repairing and nourishing agents. Zeus didn't know where to find a few bottles of potion, and the transformed cloud hand directly handed it to Nami. I have it here too. In the same way, Prometheus's illusion fire hand, fiddling in his body, even took out a few bottles of potions. Fujitora's face is softened as visible to the naked eye. As for Kuzan, he was directly trapped into a dumpling by Nami. Back to the first Emperor pirates. Sitting cross-legged on Zeus, Chinluo's whole body began to burn a faint flame, apparently healing. As for Fujitora, he might not wake up for a while. On the other side, on an island near the Red Soil continent, appearing out of thin air, Kong and the others fell to the ground, their faces a little ashen. Lord Gorosei, 5 Elders, Holy Star Admiral. With the appearance of Sora and others, groups of soldiers wearing World Government Army uniforms hurriedly surrounded them. Looking down, the island where Garp and others are standing is one of the army's bases. Obviously, the Gorosei 5 Elders set out from here to save the air and others. Cough, cough. Headed, half kneeling, the Gorosei 5 Elders had blood on their mouths, fluffy white beards on their chins, which had long been dyed red, especially that face, full of pallor, chest, and even more so Vivi collapsed. Call the doctor. With a ferocious face, the old man stood up, his eyes were full of anger, even breathing now feels so stinging, he has not felt this pain for many years. Yes. After a while, the whole island was stunned, and then a group of soldiers came from the Red Soil continent. A day later, the whole world was alerted again, and countless news birds flew to all parts of the world. New World Marine headquarters sank, Marine Marshal Sengoku lost his arm, and Marine returned to Marineford. On this day, the entire sea set off endless waves, just because the culprit behind all this was the Emperor Shi Huang of the First Emperor Pirates. Innumerable, the prestige of the First Emperor Pirates has once again reached its peak, and the First Emperor is called the voice of One Piece, King of Pirates, and more. Compared with the increasing majesty of the First Emperor Pirates, Marine has fallen into a trough, which can be said to be a great loss of strength. In a short period of time, he can no longer make waves. The vacancy of Marine elite has not yet been filled, coupled with the arrest of Kuzan Admiral and Sengoku's broken arm, it has completely affected the entire Marine, and now, Marine can be said to have plummeted and his strength is not as good as before. And with the decline of Marine, what is greeted is the expansion of pirates. Before you know it, more and more pirates appear in the Four Seas, the Great Route, and the New World, but Marine has nothing to do. The whole world was instantly plunged into gunpowder smoke, which could be seen everywhere, burning, killing and looting, and corpses like mountains. Kingdoms, merchants, pirates, all kinds of forces, and their ambitions are inflated. Make the whole sea a mess. And the fuse that caused all this was still the Emperor Shi Huang of the Shi Huang Pirates. In the meantime, the Revolutionary Army is none other than the Revolutionary Army, because with the withdrawal of the Army Admiral, the Revolutionary Army has found an opportunity to develop recklessly, and more kingdoms have fallen into deep pockets. Coupled with the various materials traded with the First Emperor Pirates, the Revolutionary Army has become a new round of behemoths. It has even begun to rebel against the world government in an upright manner. It has to be said that the Revolutionary Army picked a good time. Even strictly speaking, if the Army Admiral leaves, there may be a shadow of the Revolutionary Army. However, before he knew it, the Revolutionary Army had begun to have friction with the First Emperor Pirates, which made Long very anxious. The only fortunate thing is that these frictions, or Mars, are not very strong, but they are worthy of the dragon's attention. Chapter 328 Baldic, the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army, Dragon rubs his forehead and frowns. Mr. Long, our revolution in the New World has been stopped. Sabo has become more and more mature, and in the unnatural, the aura of the superior is also deeper, and, not long ago, he has taken the devil fruit, and his current strength is already a mystery. Now, Sabo looked serious and handed the document in his hand to the dragon. And Long, looking at the above news, couldn't help but had a headache. You must know that the development of the Revolutionary Army is not limited to the Four Seas and great shipping routes. In the New World, the forces in the shadows of the Revolutionary Army are equally astonishing. As for why there is friction with the First Emperor Pirates, it is because the First Emperor Pirates are already recovering their territory. Bigmom, Kaido, Red the Aloof, the sites of these 5 emperors, the First Emperor Pirates have already started, but other forces are also doing it. Not to mention the hidden forces in the New World, the Revolutionary Army alone occupies a large part of these territories. With the development of the two sides, friction will inevitably occur, but it stops at the bottom, or even a small area. After all, strictly speaking, the first Emperor pirates did not put their energy on this before, which led to other forces. Intervention possible. But recently, the first Emperor pirates have begun to slowly recover these territories. Although it is not obvious, this is not good news for other forces in the New World and the Revolutionary Army. Sabo, first restrain the people below. Now is not the time to have friction with the first Emperor pirates. I've given orders to go on, but... Sabo hesitated, frowned, looked at the dragon tangled, and said, Mr. Long, then our development in the New World. First focus on the Great Root and the Four Seas. As for the New World, let's develop slowly first. Our primary enemy is the world government. Now the trade with the first Emperor pirates cannot be cut off. Dragon is very clear about the importance and a little helpless. The first Emperor pirates, the central city, where Qin Luo practiced, was still under the big tree. Looking at the rising and falling sea of clouds in front of him, through the thin mist, Qin Luo was able to have a panoramic view of the entire center of the Four Seasons island of the first Emperor pirates. In the early morning, the entire first Emperor pirates were already alive, and even here, Qin Luo could vaguely hear the shouts and laughter coming from the bottom of the central city. All kinds of breakfast shops have long been fragrant. The entire broad street is full of various human beings, including parents who send their children to school, and businessmen who are busy. In short, it is harmonious and happy. Perhaps in the remote places of the first Emperor pirates, such as some villages, life may not be very good, but as the days change, these are slowly changing. Because there is no slave system in the first Emperor pirates, all labor must be paid. For this reason, as long as they are not lazy, no one will starve to death. Compared with the outside world, this place is already a pure land. Of course, there are too many races, and there will inevitably be some frictions, but these are not things Qin Luo should consider, because all of this is Nami's headache, but she also enjoys it. Qin Luo is not a saint, even strictly speaking, he is a morbid, extreme and stubborn person. He only cares about what he cares about, and he will never face up to those who are irrelevant. It can be said that he is cold-blooded, cruel, and selfish, but for him, the so-called kindness is a knife that can make him suffer at any time. He only needs to protect the small pure land in his heart. This requirement is very small, but it is very difficult to achieve. Influenced by Zephyr, Qin Luo doesn't mind carrying around while guarding this pure land. Since returning to the first Emperor pirates yesterday, Qin Luo's injury has stabilized after a night of healing. This action can be said to be a bit unexpected, and the other thing is that Qin Luo is a little heavy. The appearance of Gorosei, 5 elders made him vigilant, and as he expected, the world government is not simple. As the supreme person of power, Gorosei, 5 elders can't be someone who is powerless. The Gorosei, 5 elders who rescued Kong and the others are so weird, it's like teleportation, which makes Qin Luo was a little surprised. However, it's just a surprise, Qin Luo's ability can naturally achieve this step. On this day, Fujitora suddenly approached Qin Luo and said that he had something to look for. Qin Luo was very puzzled. Fujitora came to him, but she wanted to let Kuzan go by herself. Speaking of his own philosophy, it is actually similar to Kuzan Admiral. He really just hopes that the world can be peaceful and just. Do whatever you want, but you can't go outside the scope of Shiwangdao. If it crosses my bottom line, I won't keep him. A serious expression, Qin Luo looked at Fujitora seriously, not joking at all. If I can persuade him to join the first Emperor pirates. Fujitora stopped playing and looked at Qin Luo very solemnly. I can write off everything in the past, and status, power, wealth, what he wants, what I give him, and the exact same treatment as you, I can give it, but on the issue of trust, you should know he is not like you. At first, then Qin Luo looked at Fujitora Isho. Waiting for my good news, I believe his justice will be confirmed in the first Emperor Pirates. Fujitora couldn't wait, just stood up and left. At the same time, after receiving confirmation from Qin Luo, Fujitora breathed a sigh of relief and ran to the place where the prisoners were held. A few days later, from time to time in the first Emperor Pirates, a tall middle-aged man wearing a green blindfold could be found wandering in various towns. And this person is Kuzan, the person Fujitora asked Qin Luo for a few days ago. If in Marine, who has an appetite for Fujitora, it must be Kuzan. Because Kuzan's justice is really for the sake of the people at the bottom, it can be said that Kuzan is a real Marine, and he has worked hard to change Marine over the years, but even if he is Marine Admiral, he is powerless. Because he cares more about the safety of innocent people than arresting pirates. To be honest, he hates Qin Luo very much and wants to kill Qin Luo. However, since being picked up by Fujitora, everything Kuzan has been exposed to these days makes him unbelievable, and this is the first time he has doubts about himself. Ease, peace, prosperity, everything, surrounded him every day. The laughter on the street and the peaceful coexistence of various human beings are constantly impacting him. For a long time, he thought that this kind of life was just an illusion, but now, the reality appeared in front of his eyes. At first, Kuzan thought that Fujitora was fooling him and created this illusion for him, but then, what he saw and heard every day made Kuzan subvert his imagination. It's a paradise. Here, it is far more harmonious than imagined, and what makes Kuzan suspicious of life the most is that there is no slave in the entire First Emperor Pirates, not even one. 1 or 2 days, 10 days and half a month passed, Kuzan visited almost the entire Shuangdao, and then he fell silent. Here, it is completely in line with the justice in his heart, and it is also the dream he has always wanted to achieve. Chapter 329 In front of an open-air restaurant, Kuzan was sitting here, drinking tea silently, watching the streets with people coming and going, with a look of comfort on his face, which he had never felt before. Boss, have a signature dish. Fujitora sat opposite Kuzan, looked at Kuzan a little dazed, and said lazily, what? The impact hasn't eased yet. Your ability to bear seems to be a bit poor. Is that why you left Marine? A sigh, Fujitora looked at the man in front of him and gave up. How is it? Is this in line with your justice? Qin Luo said, as long as you are willing to join the First Emperor Pirates, the previous things will be written off and given you considerable rights, you can do whatever you want. This is comparable to Marine. Much more freedom. Smashing his mouth, Fujitora tempted. I want to know, will the First Emperor's territory remain like this forever? Kuzan frowned, his tone serious. Of course, Fujitora said. Kuzan's tone was also a little low, but then he said angrily, but, this is not the reason why he can slaughter the island at will. If he really wants to build a peaceful country, then he will not kill so many people. So far, the death in how many people were in the hands of the First Emperor? How many kingdoms were destroyed? How many islands were sunk? The innocent souls that fell at the feet of that bastard, I am afraid that I have lost count. Words were fierce, and Kuzan was a little excited, almost gnashing his teeth. This guest, please pay attention to your words, you are not welcome here, please leave. At this time, the restaurant owner carried a plate of food, threw it on the dining table angrily, spread it out, and looked at Kuzan with fire-breathing eyes, extremely unkind. Even some people who were close to each other looked at Fujitora and Kuzan unkindly. I don't know where I am offended. Observation Hockey. Keen Kuzan can clearly feel the anger of the shopkeeper and the hostility of the people around him. Kuzan did not understand when he had offended these ordinary people. HMPH, how can you slander the Emperor? We don't care what the outside world says about the Emperor, but we know that this hard-won life is bestowed by the Emperor. Even a small person like me knows that the establishment of a pure land is due to countless made of bones. They all sacrificed their lives for this. What's more, those intruders provoked the First Emperor Pirates first. I don't care what the reason is, I only know that in this world of the weak, the Emperor has given us a peaceful life, and I will not allow it. You slander the Emperor, please leave, Diaresis. The anger widened, the shopkeeper became more and more angry, and the people around him also had a look of approval. These ordinary residents don't understand the big truth. They only hope to keep this hard-won life in peace. Anyone who tries to destroy this country is an enemy, even if the other party is an ordinary person like them, even innocent man of. If you want to blame, you can only blame this sick world. People are born with inequality, mercy, only the strong will have it. I'm sorry, we'll go right away. Full of embarrassment, Fujitora pulled Kuzan in a daze and left. That madman has such prestige in this country. Don't those people know how many innocent people their emperor has killed? With Fujitora by his side, Kuzan couldn't believe it. I tell you very clearly, they all know. Shaking his head with a wry smile, Kuzan was also confused. Then why? Kuzan hesitated. If a person can't even live on his own, do you think he will care about people who have nothing to do with it? Maybe, the world is really wrong. Fujitora sighed, trying to spit out all the dullness in his heart. I have a headache, I won't accompany you anymore, think about it for yourself. I'm going to take a nap. The more she thought about it, the more headache. Fujitora yawned and put her troubles out of her mind. The more I think about it, the more confused it becomes, it is better to sleep comfortably. For a time, Kuzan was the only one at the scene, wandering in despair. The Imperial City Warehouse, a huge storage room, can be said to be the entire lifeline of the First Emperor pirates, because here, Going and Bailey of the First Emperor pirates are stored, as well as some important materials. Qin Luo came here. Undoubtedly, the garrison here is very strong, and it is very close to the residence of Nami and others. It can be said that it is next to the back garden, and the location is also behind the discussion hall. Every day and night, there are troops patrolling here. Standing outside, followed by Nami, Qin Luo entered inside. As soon as you enter the door, you will be greeted with colorful and various jewels, like a rainbow of colors, which is hard to pull out. Some of these precious jewels were donated by Fishman Island, but most of them were obtained by destroying other pirate forces. Of course, this is where going is the most. If the situation here is seen by the pirates in the sea, it is estimated that many people would rather hold the crisis of death, and they will come to plunder it. It is the best interpretation of this world. Nami was still full of tenderness towards these glittering jewels. Qin Luo walked to the side and looked at the large stones that were randomly discarded on the ground. These stones were all cube-shaped and had only two colors, dark red and plain black. Diaresis, this is the signpost to the final island, Laugh Tale. Two dark red cubic stones, engraved with words Qin Luo was familiar with but could not understand, exuded the breath of history, and stood in this hall. There are 4 such dark red stone tablets in total, and each stone tablet records a location. When these locations are known and the 4 points are connected on the map, the one that appears in the center is the final island of Laugh Tale. Location. Quote. Of King Zhao, where are the remaining 2 pieces? Qin Luo had a sullen face. For some reason, he felt that the final island might have something he wanted to know. Most importantly, he was also curious about what the final island had. This has been investigated. The 3rd piece is in the hands of the redhead. As for the 4th piece, it seems to be in a moving kingdom. Nami smiled. She had paid attention to this news a long time ago. Because she feels that what the world government is hiding is definitely a treasure that can shock the whole world. A moving kingdom. Qin Luo is interested in this mobile country. This country is called the country of Zhou, and there is a race living in it, the Fur tribe. That's how it ends. Qin Luo's face was somber, and he almost forgot. How could Momonosuke let him live until now? He made a mistake. Chapter 330 How many of these black stels are there? After clearing the dark red steel, Qin Luo turned his gaze to the black steel. This is not clear, but these should be the historical text. Originally, there was a piece of Sky Island, and there was a piece of Fishman Island. Some time ago, it was reported that there was a piece of the Great Root Alabasta, but it was not certain. You should pay more attention to these news. As for the two guideposts pointing to Laugh Tale, they will appear here sooner or later. A week later, in the waters of the Great Root, a giant going ship with the emblem of the first emperor hung high and sailed slowly here. Starting from the territory of the first emperor, Perona and his party went to Alabasta, a desert kingdom on the Great Root, and brought back a piece of historical text. At the beginning, no one knew about the first emperor's trip, but the sign was too eye-catching. The high-hanging first emperor logo, the whole body going, could also navigate by sea, land and air. Except for the first emperor of the first emperor pirates, now this one there is really no other ship in the world that has such a clear sign. Therefore, some major forces learned the news. Among them, Marine was the most tangled, but when he learned that Perona was on board, he gave up the possibility of attacking. Marine didn't even move, so the other forces just turned a blind eye, and Quandang didn't see it, and instead followed along. Two dodged, not daring to meet the first emperor. The world is so big, there are countless ignorant people, not to mention that the whole body of the Shuang is like a firefly in the dark night, almost blinding the eyes of some pirates. For this reason, a lot of battles, big and small, happened. Second rate. It is conceivable how sad these pirates are, and basically all sank to the bottom of the sea. There were many pirates who disappeared before they got close to the first emperor, which once made the pirate circle think that this going ship was a ghost ship. Finally, after 7 or 8 days, everyone stopped and walked, and Alabasta, a desert kingdom, appeared on the horizon. The destination is here. Perona looked out at the horizon. Zeus. Smack. The thunder flickered, Zeus showed his power, and provided power to the Shuang. It started slowly. The Shuang left the sea and flew directly towards the island, and it had a great sense of impact, just because the whole Shuang was free. Thunder. The Shuang has always had two flight power systems, that is, the thunder and the flame. As long as there is enough energy, the Shuang can run across the sky. It can be said that the Shuang is the most advanced giant ship in the world. It's hot. As if two worlds, as soon as you enter the island, the weather becomes hot. Is there really any historical text here? Vej glanced at the deserted area under the ship and hesitated. There should be nothing wrong. Perona walked to the rail of the boat and looked at the desert under her feet. At the end of the sky, a few buildings had already appeared. Like a large shadow, in the towns of Alabasta, at this moment all the residents looked up at the flying giant ship, and they were all shocked. Was a lot involved when the Straw Hat Pirates defeated the nation's patron saint, the former Shichibukai crocodile. The biggest event is the rebellion, but because of the defeat of Crocodile, the present Alabasta is far more peaceful and prosperous than before. The rebel army led by Kosha successfully resolved the misunderstanding with the king's army. For this reason, they merged directly. Now Alabasta is no longer in chaos and has fallen into peace. Neferutali Cobra, the king of Alabasta, he is much older than a few years ago, and now a princess named Vivi handles the affairs of the kingdom, while Kosha, the former rebel army, has become he was the minister of the kingdom and helped Vivi deal with the affairs of the kingdom. The most important thing is that the surname Neferutali is one of the 20 royal families who created the world government 800 years ago, but the Neferutali family refused to settle in the Holy Land Mariajoy. For this reason, they have been the royal family of Alabasta for generations. Report to Princess Vivi that a pirate group suspected to be pirates is heading towards the Imperial City. The huge Imperial City Hall, CGAC, a woman who looked mature, beautiful and gentle was handling daily affairs with the help of Kosha, when a soldier broke the silence. The pirates landed, isn't there a king's army? Vivi, who was working hard, raised her delicate face, reached out and brushed the blue hair on her forehead to her ears, and looked at the signal soldier gently, with some doubts. After all, although Alabasta is a desert country, it is also a stop for many pirates to replenish supplies. For this reason, pirates are not uncommon. Vivi. At this time, in the apse, an old man with long white hair, followed by several ministers, came out with a serious look. "Father, why don't you rest?" Standing up quickly, Vivi looked worried. As time passed, his father's health was getting worse and worse. This was Vivi's pain all along. "Princess, the pirates who came this time are different. If you are not careful, our country may sink to the bottom of the sea." Behind him, a minister frowned, a little frightened on his face. "Notice, don't offend the guests, let's all go outside the palace to meet them." A cough, the old man was King Cobra of Alabasta, Vivi's father. "Father, your health is not good, let me do this." Vivi was a little worried, looking at his fading father, his heart was sour. "Vivi, the guests who came this time are representatives of the first Emperor Pirates. No matter what they are for, we must not offend them, otherwise the consequences will be disastrous." Looking at his daughter who has gradually matured and his recent ability in government affairs, Cobra smiled. He believed that his daughter would definitely be a good king. The first Emperor Pirates, could it be? Opening her mouth wide, Vivi was stunned, and then her pretty face was pale and a little frightened. "I'll be fine with my father here." Touching his aqua blue hair, Cobra sighed, and then led the minister out of the hall. At the same time, Skyrim, a giant ship with a whole body going surrounded by boundless thunder, began to descend slowly. Around, a group of King's army had already been surrounded, and they were all watching this huge flying ship vigilantly. "All put away your arms, this is our most honored guest at Alabasta." In the Imperial City Square, Cobra dismissed the soldiers, then raised his head and slowly looked at the first emperor, which had already fallen to the ground. Gudong. Cold sweat was dripping, and before seeing a figure, many ministers and soldiers felt a suffocating feeling of oppression, and they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. "You must know that the other party is a member of the first Emperor Pirates." "What kind of existence is the first Emperor Pirates?" "Over the years, no matter how ignorant you are, you should have heard of it, let alone a country. The country that was destroyed in the hands of the first Emperor Pirates, no one can say clearly, because there are too many." Chapter 331 Da. There was a sound of footsteps, and the one who came down first was a woman wearing a gothic dress and a high hat. The first Emperor Pirates, female ghost sword Perona. And their hearts jumped when they looked at the figure that came down. Supernova Evil, Age Beige. Supernova Evil Era U, Urki. Quote. More and more cold sweats began to flow, even in this hot weather, all the ministers felt a chill. Without hesitation, if the other party wants to destroy Alabasta, it can be done with just these few people. I don't know about the arrival of the lords of the first Emperor Pirates, but Alabasta has a long way to go. Stiff all over, Cobra took all the ministers and bent down. "Are you the king of this country?" Forward, Perona looked at Cobra, as well as the numerous soldiers around, as they exited plainly. In Lower Cobra, it is the king of this country who has seen Lord Perona. Was still bent over, not daring to show any disrespect, knowing that these people were more terrifying than Tenryubito. "We'll be staying here for 3 days. Besides, I heard that this country has a historical text, and we want it." There was no disguise at all, Perona stated his intentions directly. With a shudder in his heart, Cobra pursed his lips with difficulty, hesitant. "Please come into the city and taste some of Alabasta's specialties, and then I will give the historical text to the adults." There was no hesitation at all. Even if this piece of history was something they had guarded from generation to generation, Cobra did not dare to refuse at this moment. The gains and losses were too heavy. "You are more aware of current affairs than I imagined. You can rest assured that we will not destroy Alabasta for no reason." Perona is really boring for Cobra's cautiousness. "Thank you, my lords." Hearing Perona's words, almost everyone present breathed a sigh of relief. This country is too run down, and it is not as majestic as a town in our first emperor's city. Drifting beside Perona, Zeus and Prometheus looked disgusted. These words, like a heavy blow, made Cobra and the others hard to breathe. I don't even think about the environment here. It is already awesome to be able to build a country in the desert. Afterwards, the group entered the palace. The wind is surging, time is like quicksand that cannot be grasped, and it disappears with the wind. 2 years later. The first Emperor pirates have already taken over most of the territory of the New World, and they can be said to be the worthy overlords. However, in the past 2 years, the first Emperor pirates have rarely moved, especially the first Emperor pirates. The Emperor, as if the world has evaporated, for 2 years, there is no more news. In the past 2 years, the first Emperor pirates have only done one major event, but this major event has caused an uproar all over the world. That is the expansion of the island. That's right, the first Emperor Pirates continent has been expanded again. In the past, the sites of the 5 emperors such as Bigmom, Kaido of the Beasts, Red the Aloof, and all the wealthy islands were basically taken over by the first Emperor Pirates. Using means, migrated to the first Emperor Pirates. Now the territory of the first Emperor Pirates has surpassed the super large island, and it can be said to be the largest continent outside the Red Soil continent. And the number of races living on it exploded directly, breaking 10 billion. At the beginning, due to the increase in the number of people, the first Emperor Pirates broke out several rebellions. It can be said to be a major revolution in history. Even the revolution of the Revolutionary Army and the world government at that time was affected, and finally had to stop. To avoid being hit. Behind these rebellions, there are shadows of major forces, such as the Revolutionary Army, Marine, world government, other kingdoms, and pirate forces. For this reason, the first Emperor Pirates were a bit devastated at first, and then because of an order, the entire first Emperor Pirates began to be dyed red, and the air was filled with disgusting blood every day. The Emperor Shihuang of the Shihuang Pirates ordered that all rebels be slaughtered, and if there were any rebels, the 3 clans would be wiped out. After this order was issued, the 3rd generation leader of the first Emperor Pirates led the various troops of the first Emperor Pirates, which were over 1 million, and they carried out inhumane massacres against the rebellions in various places. According to the news reports in those years, countless lives were lost in every rebellion, and now the first Emperor Pirates have a special landscape area, the Land of Bones. People with fragile hearts, when they step into this area, will either go crazy or be frightened. Just because this area is full of small islands piled up with bones, it is said that the seawater around this island is blood red for many years, extremely terrifying. After these several massacres, the whole world was made aware of the cruelty of the Emperor Shihuang of the Shihuang Pirates. For this reason, all the rebels silenced the remains, and then for half a year, the Shihuang Pirates began to calm down. Without the appearance of rebels, the first Emperor Pirates began to develop the economy and people's livelihood. In the past 2 years, the first Emperor Pirates have formulated laws one by one. For example, regardless of race, within the territory of the first Emperor Pirates, all are equal, and all fights and murders are executed. There is no slavery, it is all employment, and anyone who violates this regulation will be executed. No matter who it is, in the first Emperor Pirates, there can be no oppression, humiliation, inequity. Violators will all be executed. One after another, all related to development. When these laws were implemented, the tens of billions of residents of the first Emperor Pirates were hesitant at first, but when one thing was confirmed, the first Emperor Pirates, the cohesion began to explode. The first Emperor Pirates, which governed such a large territory, gave birth to escorts, with a number of tens of millions. These escorts are not the army, but only maintain the order of the operation of the first Emperor Pirates. These escorts may not be very powerful. But everyone is equipped with a laser weapon invented by Caesar, the great scientist of the first Emperor Pirates. Even if it is a Marine Lieutenant Junior grade, it will be instantly killed if you are not careful. Yes, Chinluo took Punk Hassad's scientist Caesar as his subordinate. Kaiser Current, former Marine Science Corps scientist, was a colleague with Vegapunk and Vinsmoke Judge. Arrested for causing a scientific weapons outbreak in Punk Hazard, escaped from the prison ship, returned to Punk Hazard to secretly develop SAD, the raw material of artificial devil fruit Smile, and kidnapped children for giant experimentation, with Don Quixote. Doflamingo collaboration. The other party was originally Doflamingo's subordinate. After Doflamingo's death, he has been staying in Punk Hazard, trying to survive, lest Chin Luo cause him trouble. Then, Chin Luo still found it. Just when Caesar was about to die, Chin Luo felt that he was very useful, so he took him as a subordinate and used it for research in the laboratory. In this regard, Caesar wept bitterly, was grateful, and vowed to form a powerful scientific army for Chin Luo and become a top scientist surpassing Vegapunk. 2. Chapter-322-. Compared with the tens of millions of escorts, the First Emperor pirates also have hidden troops. These are the capital of the First Emperor pirates standing in the sea, which is as many as 1 million. Those who can enter this army are basically artificial devil fruit, artificial weapon fruit, technology, rokushiki, original devil fruit, swordsman, fighting technique army, etc. Each one is worth 100, all of them are the elite of the elite, otherwise, how can they protect the vast territory of the First Emperor pirates? For this reason, under so many powerful forces, the territory of the First Emperor pirates began to flourish, and basically no force in the New World dared to provoke the First Emperor pirates. Therefore, the First Emperor pirates ushered in rapid development. Under the suppression of iron and blood at the beginning, countless races slowly enjoyed peace, equality and stability. Although there are still unwilling people in the dark, the First Emperor pirates more than half of the residents are full of support for the First Emperor pirates. The current First Emperor pirates can be said to be the most prosperous country in the world. And, there are all over the world, the First Emperor the pirates are all owned or manufactured, and they have welcomed countless tourists, causing the economy of the First Emperor pirates to rocket into the sky like a rocket. As long as they are residents of the First Emperor pirates, as long as they are not lazy, everyone basically has some spare money in their hands, not to mention a lot of meat, but at least they can dress warmly and eat well, which makes the people's hearts unite. More solid. The prosperity and peace of the First Emperor pirates, to the outside world, is simply a paradise. For this reason, the sea is gradually overflowing, and a great impact has occurred. Every day, stowaways arrive at the First Emperor pirates, wanting to live and live here. For this reason, the senses of the First Emperor on the whole sea are no longer all negative information. After all, tens of billions of residents love their emperor. It will also decrease more or less. Therefore, many newspapers all over the world set off a criticism of the good and evil of the First Emperor, which was once a conversation between people after dinner. Of course, there are mixed reviews. Whoever says who is right is just a joke. After all, the First Emperor has not appeared in the eyes of the world for a long time. To say which force has had the worst performance in the past 2 years, it is not the world government. Because of the restraint of both sides, in the past 2 years, although the First Emperor pirates and the Revolutionary Army had a lot of friction, and the friction was getting bigger and bigger, it had already involved the high-level officials of both sides, but it did not interrupt the trade between the two sides. Therefore, with the support of the First Emperor pirates, the Revolutionary Army has become one of the 3 largest forces in the sea. Now, the 5 emperors and marine are no longer the biggest forces. After all, compared with the First Emperor pirates, the world government, and the Revolutionary Army, their forces seem to be somewhat insufficient. However, the same cannot be underestimated. After all, these forces have only been roughly unified for a while. Because of the trade with the First Emperor pirates, the Revolutionary Army has developed rapidly in the past 2 years, and has robbed many world allies, which once gave the world government a headache. Now, the Revolutionary Army has occupied a quarter of the Great Route, as well as some secret sites in the New World and the Four Seas, while the world government still occupies the Great Route, the Four Seas, and most of the territory. As for the New World, it is also secretly owned. As for the First Emperor pirates, the main development place is in the New World. As for the Great Route, it also involves a little. Under the occupation of these three behemoths, the other places are the five emperors, the original Shichibukai, some powerful kingdoms, and the territory of many scattered forces. In addition to these, there are many borderless places. After all, the world is very big. In the past 2 years, it can be said that the undercurrent is surging. Not to mention the open and secret struggle between the Revolutionary Army and the world government, the development of marine alone makes people talk about it. 2 years ago, the Emperor Shihuang of the Shihuang pirates destroyed Marine's headquarters in the New World, causing Marine to flee and return to the Great Route Marineford. Then a month later, Marine began to recruit troops from the world, and issued a decision piece by piece. Example, the original Admiral Oniguma was promoted to the new Marine Admiral, and because of the recruitment, Marine has only been developing in the past 2 years, and now it has been slowed down after the precipitation of time. However, compared to before, Marine was still very weak and lost his previous prestige. After all, Sengoku, Garp and others were getting older. The most important thing is that 2 years ago, the news of Kuzan's betrayal of Marine and joining the First Emperor pirates completely pushed Marine into the abyss. It can be said that during that time, Marine has always been a joke on the sea. For this reason, many news agencies have published the history of Marine's betrayal, both overtly and secretly, all satirizing Marine. Example, the Pillars of Black Arm Zephyr and Kuzan used to be Marine, but now all were sentenced to Marine. What does that mean? Illustrates the corruption of Marine. Which of these two people is not the strong one who suppresses one side? But now they have given up Marine, which makes people think, has Marine really gone to a stranger? A result, Marine Admiral has not gathered. It can be said that the current Marine, although it is also a big force, is no longer on the same level as before. To this end, Marine restarted the Shichibukai plan, but the result was very bleak, and in the end, it didn't work. This has to be said to be a failure. However, as long as Sengoku and others don't die, Marine is still inviolable. After all, the thin dead camel is bigger than the horse. Even if the older generations such as Sengoku, Garp, and Crane are completely old now, their strength is there. Have to mention Sengoku here. Because the left arm was ripped off by Chin Luo, Sengoku is now equipped with a human fiber arm. It can be said that it is exactly the same as the arm of a normal person, but it still belongs to the machine. Undoubtedly, this is another means of Vegapunk. In addition to the development of the First Emperor pirates, the Revolutionary Army, and the Marines, there are several forces in the ocean, which can be said to be extremely famous. In addition to the original 5 emperors, red-haired Shanks, there are now 3 forces on the sea, and they even say that these 3 forces are the new 5 emperors. Moreover, the world government also launched a bounty order, which completely established the status of these 3 forces. The first, and the 5 emperors that no one objected to, was the Whitebeard pirates. The current captain, Fire Fist Ace, has been rumored that Fire Fist Ace had fought against the Redhead and was respected by the latter. The second is the Straw Hat Pirates. It may be due to inertia. The Straw Hat Pirates have not experienced events such as Dressrosa, but on the contrary, they have experienced other things, and because of various problems, they have gathered a lot of followers. They collectively known as the Straw Hat Big Fleet. Such as the New Supernova, Cavendish, Bartolomeo, Hapo Navy and many more pirates. For this reason, the captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, Monkey D. Luffy, is known as the new 5 emperors, offering a reward of 1.5 billion, and the world government has also hyped it up. Speaking of the first 2, there may be some people who object, but they are not very strong. But if you want to talk about the third 5 emperors, then the sea will be noisy, and there will be curses everywhere. Basically, more than 80% of the pirates do not agree, but the world government has also publicized this matter. And gave affirmation. For this reason, now the emperor's appeal is not very high. It was not until something happened that the voice of doubt slowly subsided. The third 5 emperor, named King of Clowns, also known as Buggy. Why did this little-known guy become the new 5 emperors? That's because someone photographed this guy, who once drank with 5 Emperor Shanks, and yelled at the redhead, but the redhead had a scared look on his face. Then, because of this incident, some fictional legends of the Great Buggy in the Sea, various versions, began to emerge one after another. Example, there are rumors that this buggy god, like the red-haired Shanks, was an intern on the ship of One Piece, King of Pirates. There are also rumors that the buggy god made Mihawk, the world's largest swordsman, helpless. There are even more outrageous rumors, said the great god Buggy, who once made the first emperor suffer a big loss. Buggy, the king of clowns, is so famous. Chapter 333 Immediately afterwards, the world government didn't know what it was doing, so they publicized it. As a result, although many people remained skeptical, the new 5 emperors were so strangely determined. The number 1 is undoubtedly the Emperor Shihuang of the Shihuang Pirates. Although this man has not appeared for 2 years, but in the whole sea, no one is not convinced. Then there is the red-haired Shanks, then the Fire Fist Ace, and the Straw Hat Monkey D. Luffy, and the last one is the most mysterious King of Clowns Buggy. As for why the King of Clowns is said to be mysterious, that is because there are too many legends about this guy, and there are very few people who have seen it with their own eyes. For this reason, there are also rumors that the King of Clowns is too strong, so everyone who saw him fighting died. In the end, the 5 emperors were gathered like this. In addition to the birth of the 5 emperors, a lot has happened in the past 2 years. Example, the original Shichibukai and Hawkeye Mihawk came to the first Emperor Pirates alone and competed with the female ghost sword Perona. No one knows the final result. I only know that Mihawk disappeared after the incident, and there was no news for several years, and Perona also disappeared, and there was no news for a few years. At the beginning, some people made bets, some said that Hawkeye 26 won, and some said that Perona won. Similarly, both sides were also guessed. But after 2 years, there was no news, and it didn't take long for this matter to disappear without a trace. There is also the news of former Shichibukai, Sand Crocodile, and Tyrant Bartholomew Bear. Plus, there are plenty of rookies making their mark on the sea. Such as Iron Rod Alvida, a beautiful woman who ate Paramesha's slippery fruit, and Tun Tun Wapple, Spring Fruit Owner, Hyena Bellamy, Quick Cut Fruit Bonias, Bomb Fruit Mr. 5. These, with the cessation of the various major forces, they finally had their first days, and their fame began to grow gradually. In short, in the past 2 years, both ordinary and extraordinary, what should have happened has happened, and what should not have happened may or may not have happened. For the time being, the sea is in a kind of equilibrium. Sacred place of Mariajoy, in the depths, a land of birds and flowers, even the seasons change, there is a giant tree towering into the clouds, exuding bursts of fragrant breath. In front of this mysterious place, in a luxurious hall, there are 5 figures kneeling at this moment, and in front of the 5 figures, on the high platform, a void throne stands there. If Sengoku was here, he would be surprised to find that the 5 figures kneeling on the ground were actually Gorosei, 5 elders. Reverent, terrified, the Gorosei 5 elders knelt on the ground with their heads bowed, like servants, kneeling and clinging to the empty void throne. A stick of incense passed, the whole hall could be heard falling needles, and the Gorosei 5 elders were sweating profusely, but even so, they did not dare to look up. And silently, on the void throne, a figure shrouded in mist appeared out of thin air. The first Emperor Pirates, first Emperor Central City. After 2 years, a slender figure reappeared beside the big tree and stone table, calmly watching the vast territory. The current first Emperor Pirates can be said to be beyond recognition. The most striking thing is that there is already an island in the sky above the territory of the first Emperor Pirates. At night, the bright moon is in the sky. The Bat Garden was full of fire. The slender maids brought all the things needed for the banquet and started slowly. One by one, the big men of the first Emperor Pirates began to arrive. The captain is out. From far away, I heard Sun Wukong, Hitsugaya Toshiro and others coming. Fujitora is among them. Looks like I'm not too late. At this time, Kuzan came with Fujitora and smiled. Since Kuzan joined the first Emperor Pirates, he has been the top leader of tens of millions of guards. It can be said that he is much busier than when he was an admiral. Over the years, Kuzan feels that he is very fulfilled, because his dream is slowly close. Immediately after, Perona, Nami, Bej, etc., all came to the banquet. It can be said that tonight, the entire senior management of the first Emperor Pirates gathered here, and this power is enough to subvert the world. Isn't the captain out? Why hasn't he come yet? Bej nibbled on a piece of chicken thigh, touched Yoroj, and looked around. I'm here. It was said that Cao Cao and Cao Cao were coming, and just after Bej's words fell, outside the corridor, Qinluo came to the banquet. Captain! Everyone shouted. After all, everyone hadn't seen each other for more than 2 years. Everyone has changed a lot. Taking the lead, Qinluo looked at the people who were tougher and more mature than before, with certainty in his eyes. Over the years, everyone has become much stronger. Qinluo stood up, picked up a glass of wine, and saluted everyone. It's been a lot of hard work for you all these years. The first Emperor Pirates are looking good now. The others, whose expressions were rarely serious, raised the wine glasses in front of them and gestured. After drinking, Qinluo waved his hand and announced the start of the banquet. Slowly started, the whole banquet began to be noisy, toasting toasts, punching punches, and performances. Scratchman, for example, played a new arrangement, and everyone swayed, and the whole back garden was full of laughter. As the amount of alcohol increased, chickens and dogs jumped, the scene was chaotic, and all kinds of funny and drunken madness began to breed. Even Nami, Perona, Jewelry Bonnie and other women also blushed with their pretty faces, obviously arrogant. This time, Qinluo also let go, clinking glasses with Bej and others, very relieved. The moon was dark and the wind was high, and it lasted almost the whole night. The whole back garden was full of messes. Some people were drunk and went crazy, some lay down on the spot, and then snored, and some guys, the purpose is self-evident. The next day, in the afternoon, Qinluo stood on the edge of the central city, looking at the bustling commercial area under his feet, a little dazed. Leading tens of millions of guards, can the pressure be great? Back, Qinluo asked Kuzan next to him without turning his head. Now Kuzan is very high in the first Emperor Pirates. Kuzan is now the chief leader of the escort of tens of millions of people who maintain the order of the first Emperor Pirates. This right is equivalent to Martial Marine, which can be said to be supreme. But from beginning to end, on top of Kuzan, there are Nami and Perona, because the decision-makers who lead all things of the first Emperor Pirates are these two women. Although Qinluo is the emperor of the first Emperor Pirates, he seldom cares about political affairs. Generally speaking, Nami handles it. Fortunately, with Bej, Isho, and Jinbei from Fishman Island, I have no pressure. Kuzan looked at the boundless frontier below, and the smiles of those who lived and worked in peace and contentment made Kuzan live a very fulfilling life these years. Thank you for giving me such great power. Kuzan looked at the man beside him with complexity, and couldn't help sighing in his heart. Although there were many things about this man that he couldn't accept, it was undeniable that the first Emperor Pirates was really stable and what he wanted. Justice. Chapter 334 Your strength, subordinate to management, is too talented and underutilized, you have to prepare yourself. Looking back from below, Qinluo turned his head to face Kuzan, expressionless. Face changed, Kuzan met those dark pupils and didn't speak, but his heart sank. I don't like traitors, and I don't want Fujitora to be difficult in the future. If you want the first Emperor Pirates to live all over the world, then you should know that the foundation of peace is the accumulation of killing and bones. Not that Qinluo doesn't trust Kuzan, but he must warn him that Kuzan's power can subvert the sea. I'm glad you can join the first Emperor Pirates, so you can do it yourself. Disappearing out of thin air, Qinluo left, leaving Kuzan standing on the edge alone, looking out at the boundless land. Kuzan's integrity does not mean pedantic. For so many years, he has long wanted to understand, otherwise, he would not be leading the guard. However, thinking in a different position, Qinluo's warning is also necessary. After all, when Kuzan joined the First Emperor pirates, Qinluo was in retreat, that is to say, Qinluo did not know about Kuzan's joining. The main hall of the First Emperor pirates, on the side, where Nami was doing business, Qinluo was listening to Nami reporting some major events of the First Emperor pirates in the past few years. For example, the expansion of the territory, some situations on the sea now, as well as the 3 newly appointed emperors, as well as many rookies. The country of Zhou, a magical and dreamy country, a country made up of fur races of special races, because of its special place, this country has been moving for many years. Because this country is living on the back of a living being. That is a super large life that has lived for nearly 1,000 years, an incomparably huge giant elephant. As usual, this giant elephant, which cannot be seen, seems to follow a certain trajectory, moving slowly in the sea. But 2 days ago, this country welcomed a group of uninvited guests. The Straw Hat Pirates, one of the current 5 emperors, probably because of inertia. The Straw Hat Pirates have experienced events in other countries in the past few years, and they still know people they should know. It is because of other things that the Straw Hat Pirates can only become the 5 emperors now. Before coming to Zhou, the Straw Hat Pirates met the Wano-kuni samurai Kinemon, and then something else happened, and now on Zhou, they got to know the Fur Clan again, and they were holding a banquet last night. I have to say that all the members of the Straw Hat Pirates are indeed much stronger than before. Since they were listed as the 5 emperors by the world government, they have faced many challenges, but they have all been defeated. The 5 emperors can be regarded as worthy of the name, but for some major forces, the Straw Hat Pirates still have a lot of water to become the 5 emperors. Among them, what is unknown is that Luffy can become the 5 emperors, and there may be some people behind the scenes to help fuel the flames, such as the Revolutionary Army, the 5 emperors Red Hair, Fire Fist Ace. The blue sky and white clouds whizzed past, and above the vast sea, 2 different clouds passed quickly. Tessero, did I say it would take so many people? Diaresis. Changed into a hat, Napoleon was not in good spirits, and his spirit was not very good. Hey, Napoleon, the other party is also the new 5 emperors anyway, so he has to give others a face, right? Actually, I don't want to come. Under his feet, Prometheus pouted. You know, he ate magma fruit, but it hasn't developed yet. There's no time to go out and wave around. That's right, after the death of Akainu, the devil fruit fell into the territory of the First Emperor pirates again, so magma fruit was eaten by Prometheus. Now Prometheus is no longer a pure Mihos, but it's a living lava fire. As for why Prometheus can eat devil fruit, it is because he did not eat devil fruit himself. Speaking of which, Prometheus was still a little careful at the beginning. The reason why he focused on magma fruit was to surpass Zeus and Napoleon. As he expected, since he ate this devil fruit, his power was stronger than Zeus and Napoleon. Napoleon is much stronger, and now directly ranks first among the 3. This also stimulated Zeus and Napoleon, and they all wanted to eat devil fruit, but there was no suitable one for the time being, so it was delayed like this. Xiaopu is right in what he said in the previous sentence. According to the information in the investigation, this new successor may have some water, but his strength is not bad. I was going to call Master Nami, but there is no time, so it is only your turn. That's it. Tessero had a stack of documents in his hand, all information about the Straw Hat Pirates. Tessero, known as Emperor Going, can control Going to stretch and deform. He is the head of Gulen Tessero, the world's largest entertainment city, and controls many industries around the world. Tessero owns 20% of the world's Baileys, taking both black and white, using the power of money to freely manipulate Tenryubido, and even the power of the world government. Emperor Going who controls the dark world with money, and his influence spreads all over the world. But since the last time, after Nami's remediation of the underworld, Tessero was willing to surrender. Not only for this reason, in Chin Luo's body, Tessero saw the hope of being able to break down the Tenryubito who rules this world, and his hatred for Tenryubito has reached a certain extreme. His beloved Stella, he is willing to give his life. Diaresis N. This monkey D. Luffy is actually the son of a dragon. The grandson of the marine hero Garp. It's also related to the red hair. The brother is actually Fire Fist Ace. Quote. Tessero pulled out a piece of information and looked at the introduction above. Is it great? Napoleon leaned forward and couldn't read the words on it. Some of the words knew him, but he didn't know them. It should be. According to the investigation, the Straw Hat Pirates have now appeared in the country of Zou. Wait, the kingdom of Zou. What kind of kingdom is it? Napoleon was very curious. What about this country of Zou? It is a super large giant elephant, and the country formed by the fur tribe is on the back of this giant elephant, which is the country of Zou. Tessero said. But Zhao Wang Zhao is a fur race, and what race is it? Zeus was also full of curiosity. It's an animal, but it retains a lot of human characteristics. Oh, that's it. On the edge of the sky, clouds and mists are shrouded in vagueness, and a behemoth towering into the clouds is moving slowly in the sea. The huge impact is like an island, making it difficult to see the whole picture. This is a giant elephant, an ancient creature that has lived for an unknown number of years. On its back, there lives a country called the country of Zou, and the members of this country are all fur tribe blue. My God, is this a giant elephant? It's almost half the territory of our first emperor's territory. Stunned, Bej and the others stood on Prometheus and looked at the large moving shadow on the opposite side. They were all shocked and in awe of life. Such a huge body is simply unbelievable. Just facing it, I feel a crush. This is a look down from the level of life. Chapter 335 _ This is totally a super-sized sea king. Tessero took a deep breath and was shocked. It's so big, how long? Let's get closer and see. Standing suspended, everyone looked at the giant elephant, and they were all amazed at the miracle of life, because this huge creature can only be described in books, and now seeing it with my own eyes can be said to be a kind of excitement. But suddenly, roar! The incomparably huge sound wave, like a tornado, set off a boundless impact, resounding through the entire sea area. Everyone was shocked, and their minds were shaken by the strong wind. Returning to God, Bej and the others looked at the giant elephant dangerously and clenched their fists. Are we still going up? Swallowing, Prometheus looked at the giant elephant that was staring at them, and couldn't help feeling chills all over his body. Go, why not go up? Tessero had a gloomy face. After speaking, he left Prometheus's back and used the fruit ability to get closer to the giant elephant. What if it hits us? Then kill it. Fierce face, Bej also left Prometheus and flew towards the back of the giant elephant with Tessero. This time, the giant elephant didn't make a move, and didn't make any other movements. He closed his eyes again and started to move slowly. The picture, back to the moment when the giant elephant roared, the country of Zou on its back, the Fur Clan. Because of the arrival of Luffy and others, Inuarashi, the king of day, and Nekomamushi, the king of night, who were polarized, abandoned their previous suspicions, and because of last night's banquet, everyone was still drunk. Elephant Lord. At the same moment, the two most powerful leaders of the fur tribe, Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, opened their eyes and their expressions became serious. Even the sleeping Luffy and the others were startled by the loud noise. Momonosuke, what's wrong with you? Suddenly, Nami woke up, looking at Momonosuke with a painful face in her arms, and her expression became worried. The Elephant Lord. The Elephant Lord is warning. Someone has come to the island. Headache is nasty. As the young master of Wano Kuni, Momonosuke can understand the voice of the elephant for some reason. The voice has disappeared. There are a few breaths, approaching. With one hand on the hilt, Zoro looked to the horizon, and the others, observation hockey superbly, all turned their gazes in that direction. There are a lot of powerful breaths. Sanji exhaled a breath of smoke, feeling that the visitor was not good. Sure enough, it didn't take long before they landed from the sky, and two figures appeared in front of everyone. Following closely behind, Prometheus and Napoleon were suspended in midair, followed by CGAC, 100 troops of various First Emperors. This lineup, like a large black cloud, made it difficult for the fur tribes to breathe. The First Emperor's army. The pupils shrank, everyone's faces changed drastically, Chopper and Usopp screamed one after another. Why did the First Emperor's army appear here? Someone looked at Tessero and Bege with a terrified expression. Trouble. As the leaders of the fur tribe, Nekomamushi and Inuarashi looked at each other with a heavy look, and when they saw these people, they knew that the visitors were not good. In the New World, you can be ignorant, but the word Shihuang must be understood. First Emperor, where is it? Stepping forward, unable to hold back, Luffy clenched his fists, blue veins spread across his forehead, and a powerful conqueror, overwhelming, pressed towards Tessero and the others. Because of the recent series of expeditions of the First Emperor pirates and the death of Whitebeard, Ace's enemy is the enemy of his king Luffy. Conqueror. Vivi was a little surprised, but compared to Chin Luo's conqueror, this man's conqueror seemed a little weaker, just because he was the 5 emperors. Full of disdain, Tessero and Bege were directly facing Luffy's anger, and there was no other discomfort except for their faces changed. Not a single one of the 100 First Emperor's army fell. So weak, to actually want to sit with the First Emperor and call them the 5 emperors. Not even the dead Bigmom. Taking a step forward, Tessero's eyes were cold and his heart was full of indifference. Where is the First Emperor? Tell him to come out, I'm going to beat him up. Luffy's clamor can be said to have annoyed Tessero and the others, and even the 100 First Emperor's army was annoyed. These people are not simple. This is the first time I have met under Luffy's conqueror, and there is no power to fall. Zoro opened one eye and his face was flat. I was thinking, why are we being targeted? Sanji couldn't figure out why the behemoth of the First Emperor's territory would stare at them, and looking at this posture, it was aimed at them. The two sides are arguing and holding each other. Hand over the historical text stone tablet, or die. Ignoring Luffy's shouting at all, Tessero shouted loudly. Don't think about it. Second gear. Tessero's words made Luffy furious and launched an attack on the spot. Moving at a high speed and disappearing in an instant, Luffy appeared in front of Tessero, covered in smoke, and contained a powerful force. Rubber jet bullets. The force of retraction, the friction of rebound, the air ripples, creating a sonic boom. Kill them all. Luffy's action directly declared the war. Tessero's face turned cold, and he gave the order. Kill. 100 First Emperor's army, or all beasts, or swordsmen, or rokushiki, or technological weapons, rushed towards the camp of Luffy and others. No time for fear, Robin. At this time, Usopp's eyes were complicated. He naturally knew that the First Emperor was Chin Luo. Since Kaya was taken away by Chin Luo, he finally let go and joined the Straw Hat Pirates. Now he is facing the First Emperor pirates. The cadres are extremely complicated in their hearts. I don't know if I can still see Miss Kaya. Bang! With a strong collision, Sanji directly confronted Bege, and Zoro directly confronted Napoleon, which also affected many of the First Emperor's army. As for Prometheus, he activated his ability, and one after another, the magma meteorites flew towards all the targets overwhelmingly. Resort, fur tribes such as Nekomamushi and Inuarashi also joined the fight. The whole scene was instantly chaotic. Two figures appeared, countless trees collapsed, Tessero and Luffy collided with two fists, and a wave of air shattered all around. 5 emperors. Ridiculous. Resisting Luffy's attack head-on, Tessero really couldn't understand how this man became the 5th emperor, because the opponent's strength was too weak. Whoa, whoa. disappearing one after another. The surroundings were messy, Tessero flashed non-stop, and the two were like afterimages, jumping between the mountains and mountains. Rubber jet rocket launcher. Wrapped in a rich weapon, Luffy angrily appeared in front of Tessero, his hands extended, a sonic boom was generated, the whole air whimpered, and a boundless power swayed. Eyelids twitched, Tessero clenched his fist, activated his ability, and a giant wall of going appeared in front of him. Boom, boom. The flying shot passed, the giant wall of going disappeared, and it was close at hand. Tessero flew up, clenched his right fist, and slammed the giant rubber fist from Yue. Deafening, a shock wave set off endless sand and gravel. Chapter 336 _ Rubber jet machine gun. Following closely behind, the continuous fists, rubbing sparks, slammed towards Tessero, endlessly without dead ends. Tessero, who was originally disdainful, completely dignified, and the man in front of him underestimated himself. Fists were added together, Tessero roared, and both hands attacked at high speed. For a time, the two were like machines that would never run out, shooting shock waves and banging at each other. Bang bang bang. Both of them gritted their teeth and started slowly, a trace of blood overflowed from their mouths, and with the last roar, they all turned into cannonballs and flew out. Cough, cough. The gravel was all over the floor, and Tessero vomited blood from the corner of his mouth, very embarrassed. A little trash. Complete anger, the ability is activated, the land covered on the back of the giant elephant, directly transformed into going, Tessero transformed into a going giant, shining with bursting power. Fourth block Elastic Man. Climbing up from the gravel, Luffy also had a fierce look on his face. He wrapped his arms in both hands and took a bite. Accompanied by endless haze, in an instant, a huge fat man covered in dark red runes appeared fiercely in front of Tessero. I will definitely hit Fei Shi Huang, starting with you. Jumping and jumping, Luffy's eyes widened and he prepared to attack. Outrageous ants. The huge going giant, with blue veins spreading on his right arm, Tessero instantly appeared in front of Luffy and punched him. The burning sky exploded, and the two fists, one gold and one red, collided like a meteor, setting off an endless shock wave. Rubber King Gun. Going shock. Time freezes, terrifying wind and waves are generated, and everything around is shattered and turned into dust. In just a short moment, the two of them entered the white-hot heat, and the damage caused was enough to make the mountains slammed. On the other hand, the battle between Sanji and Bege has also become incandescent, but according to the situation, it turns out that Sanji is suppressing Bege. As for Zoro's side, let alone, because Napoleon only had the strength to parry, and co-authored several First Emperor's troops to barely resist Zoro. In fact, strictly speaking, this battle is extremely unfavorable to Tessero and others. You must know that the current Straw Hat Pirates are not the Straw Hat Pirates a few years ago. Perhaps the most important thing is that Luffy's side has a lot of fighting power. Nekomamushi, Inuarashi, Kinemon, Frankie, Brook, these people faced 100 First Emperor's army, in addition to the initial panic, slowly began to counter pressure, not to mention the fur tribes are all soldiers, light in terms of numbers, the First Emperor's army fell below. It can be said that this time, Tessero and the others underestimated the Straw Hat Pirates. However, just as the battle was chaotic, the entire ground began to tremble. No, it looks like the main fire is raining. Oops, today happens to be the first time the elephant spit out fire rain. Everyone is looking for a safe place and be careful to be washed away. As soon as Inuarashi finished speaking, the entire sky turned black, and the endless seawater formed a drop of water column, and at the end of the sky, a layer of waves also covered it. This sudden disaster caused the loss of most of the First Emperor's army, because there was seawater in both the sky and the ground. You must know that even the artificial devil fruit, the disadvantage is the seawater, which has never been conquered. Compared with what the fur tribes knew, the First Emperor's army was completely at a loss, and suffered a big loss for this, and was directly submerged by the sea. The rain came and went quickly, Many Marines were either submerged by the sea, washed away by the sea, or lay on the ground with no strength, and some fur tribes found the opportunity to directly control the army of the first emperor. Even if some of the first emperor's army were not capable, they were also affected by this sudden disaster, and they were all embarrassed, but they were caught by Inuarashi, Frankie and others in just a moment. The first emperor's army, which suffered a direct defeat and was invincible on the sea, suffered a big loss here. At this time, the two figures splashed and fell directly to the ground, vomiting blood. Tesoro, Bej boss. Napoleon shouted and wanted to help, but he was unable to protect himself and was tightly controlled by Zoro. After smoking a cigarette, Sanji was bruised, leaning against a big tree, looking up to the sky, his eyes full of worry. Only two Shihuang cadres are so difficult to deal with, so how strong are the other Shihuang senior cadres, what power do they possess, and what is Shihuang's existence? 5 emperors, do you and the others really have the strength to match? Get out of here. Suddenly, the whole sky was like a meteor shower, and countless magma fell. Prometheus made a big move and used his big move. Then he took the seriously injured Tesoro and Bej around him, and by the way, he rescued Napoleon and fled towards the sky. This time, they failed. 3 days later. The first emperor's territory, the central city. I need an explanation. Lu En looked indifferent, exuding inexplicable majesty around him, and looked at Tesoro, Bej and others. It's a supergiant elephant. Immediately afterwards, Tesoro opened Shikai and released it. After listening, everyone had different expressions. Seeing that everyone was silent, Qin Luo said, then let's talk about this, what do you think? Killing that giant elephant, of course, and then erasing the country on it. Perona pursed her lips and wiped the magic sword. Her voice was like a cold wind, sharp and frightening. Don't be so exaggerated. Kuzan's eyelids twitched, knowing that these lunatics were insane. Isn't that what it used to be? Erase all is the most direct, fastest and most convenient solution. Nami cocked Erlang's legs, and it didn't matter too much. Qin Luo had already made a decision in his heart about the Zou Island and the 5 Emperor Straw Hat Pirates. Ellipsis 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 ellipsis. Great Route, Baltigo, Revolutionary Army Headquarters. Long's office has a solemn expression at the moment, and the atmosphere is somewhat depressed, especially Long, who is the leader, frowns even more, looking at the news in his hand, a little melancholy. Mr. Long, now Luffy and the others are not the first emperor's opponents at all. If the first emperor really wants to attack Luffy, then... Below, Sabo, who became more and more stable, looked anxious and a little hurried. The reason is that Luffy, whom they had been paying close attention to not long ago, was in trouble, and this trouble was not small, even huge. Have you found out why the first emperor shot against Luffy? Is it because of the position of the 5th emperor? The dragon's expression was heavy. You must know that the trade with the first emperor's territory over the years has brought the revolutionary army to the top. Although the original agreement has been passed, neither side has indicated that the trade is still taking place. Even though there have been some frictions between the two sides over the years, these frictions have been suppressed by both sides. On one side, the two sides are still mutually beneficial. Of course, the two sides can suppress the premise that the first emperor is not in charge. You must know that in these years, the government affairs of the first emperor's territory have always been handled by Nami and Hitsugaya Toshiro. Compared with Qin Luo, there is no doubt that Nami's overall situation and ability to do things are better than Qin Luoqiang went up several levels. This is also the reason why the first emperor's territory and the revolutionary army have been able to maintain trade for so long. If Nami is replaced by Qin Luo, the transaction between the two sides may have been broken a few years ago. Qin Luo is not as talkative as Nami, and Long knows this well. But now, his son is being targeted, and the reason is still unclear. 2. Chapter 337 _ I'm still investigating. I don't think it's the reason for the position of the 5th emperor. After all, with the current power in the First Emperor's territory, Luffy and the others simply don't look down on them. The real 5 emperors, Luffy is still a long way off. Sabo calmed down and began to analyze. Could it be that Long, your son, took the initiative to provoke the First Emperor's territory? Ivankov on the side frowned, knowing that Luffy's ability to cause trouble should also not be underestimated. Over the years, if it wasn't for the secretive care of the Revolutionary Army, it is estimated that the grass on the graves of the Straw Hat Pirates would be 3 meters high. And the forces that are secretly watching over are not only the Revolutionary Army. Although they do not have as much attention as the Revolutionary Army, they have always followed them, such as Red Hair, Ace, and even Rayleigh. Impossible, I have always sent people to pay attention to Luffy and the others. In the past 5 years, Luffy and the others have not provoked the First Emperor's territory. This incident seems to be the sudden action of the First Emperor's territory. Sabo refuted Ivankov's conjecture, with certainty. Then what is it that makes the First Emperor's territory attack Luffy and the others? You know, Luffy is the son of Mr. Long, and he is also the brother of the 5th Emperor Fire Fist Ace, and he has something to do with the red hair. Koala already has long hair. Compared with a few years ago, she is more beautiful and seductive. At this time, her beautiful eyes are full of surprise. Leader, we have found out why the First Emperor's territory would attack Luffy. At this time, in a hurry, a bear-shaped helmet and a bearded chin named Terry Kildeo, the intelligence control officer of the Revolutionary Army, walked in with a stack of documents. Terry, what's the reason? Sabo was a little anxious, and asked impatiently on the spot. Because the First Emperor wanted to capture the historical text stone tablet in Zou Island, he was stopped by Luffy. Terry Kildeo, as the intelligence controller of the Revolutionary Army, was one of the few people who knew that Luffy was the son of the dragon. With Luffy's character, he will never give up on a partner. Grabbing the information into a ball, Sabo's heart sank. He couldn't understand this stupid brother anymore. But about the life and death of the Queen of the First Emperor's territory, that thing is a little troublesome. Ivankov had a rare thought, sitting on a chair, rubbing his coquettish big face. It seems that the deal with the First Emperor's territory is about to be broken. Everyone's heart sank. This time, not only may the transaction be broken, but even become an enemy. Mr. Long, we must help Luffy, otherwise, it is impossible to escape from the First Emperor with Luffy alone. Luffy's tendon will never send his partner out, so he will provoke the First Emperor. But this matter is related to the life of the Queen of the First Emperor's territory. The First Emperor will definitely start, and then Luffy will be in danger. Seeing that the dragon had been contemplating, Sabo couldn't help but persuade him, because he was afraid that the dragon would focus on the overall situation and ignore Luffy. This possibility is not impossible. After all, he was still his own son. After thinking about it for a while, Long felt bitter in his heart, but he still made up his mind. Sabo, Shang, Ivan, you all go to the country of Zou first, and I will come after I finish other things. Understood. Sabo's expression relaxed, non-stop, directly pulling the bear and hundreds of millions out of the meeting room. The good situation is over for you. As Sabo and the others left, Long looked at the smirking bounty in his hand and sighed involuntarily. Meanwhile, Redhead Fields. With a big hand, the red-haired sat in the first place, looking at the news in his hand. He couldn't help frowning. Is the news accurate? After reading the news, the redhead looked up at Beckman, and his heart sank. There will be no problem. Beckman was a little worried, not about the territory of the First Emperor, but about the red hair. Will they attack the First Emperor pirates? I don't think the Revolutionary Army will care about this matter. Do you want to intervene in this matter? Beckman knew the difficulty of red hair, and couldn't help but ask. The battle is about to begin. No one can avoid it. Luffy is Captain Roger's sustenance, and I will not put him in danger. The red hair looked at the boundless ocean and said solemnly. On the other side, the Sea of Whitebeard. Ace, Are you going? Putting down the message in his hand, Marco looked solemn. Luffy is in danger. I have to go. This time I'll go alone. I won't hurt the brothers. Without even thinking about it, Ace made up his mind. Is it the Straw Hat Boy? When you were in the war, you already got our approval, not to mention your brother Ace is our brother. Him, Jozu shouted loudly. A few years ago, Marco's fruit awakened, and the regeneration ability of the Phoenix directly restored Jozu's arm to its original strength. It can be said to be extremely powerful. Don't talk about getting involved. We are a family, a whole, advancing and retreating together. Vista patted Ace on the shoulder with a firm tone. Okay, then let's go and see the first emperor together. It's time to avenge my father's revenge. Ace clenched his fists, and the hatred in his heart had long been unbearable. For a time, all parties moved, and the atmosphere of the new world began to inexplicably become strange. Zhuzhidao, at the moment, the ground is messy, and countless injured fur tribes, with the help of various companions, are covered in bandages, and look at the piled-up corpses in the center with a sad expression. Although everyone worked together to drive the enemy out, during the battle, many people left the world forever. However, the real crisis has not yet passed. Luffy, are you all right? Chopper wrapped a bandage around Luffy's upper body, asked worriedly. It's okay. Luffy wiped the blood from his mouth and shook his head. He was full of vitality, and this injury would be intact after a few meals. The Straw Hat Master. At this time, Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, also wrapped in white bandages, walked towards Luffy and the others. Duke Inuarashi, Lord Nekomamushi, Usopp and the others, who were sitting together, stood up quickly, with gratitude in their eyes. If it wasn't for the help of the fur tribe this time, they really couldn't defeat the enemy so easily. Luffy's head, you better get out of here. The sooner the better. A sigh, Inuarashi looked at Luffy and the others with a heavy heart. Let's go. At this time, Momonosuke, who was sitting beside Robin, was a little nervous. The scene just now made him a little scared. No, if we leave, what will you do? Without even thinking about it, Luffy directly rejected it. He would never implicate the fur tribe. If we leave, with the brutality of the first emperor, we will definitely vent on your fur clan. We can't implicate you. Zoro wiped the long knife, very calm. We won't abandon our friends and leave alone. Sanji let out a breath of smoke. Seeing that Luffy and the others had made up their minds, Nekomamushi and Inuarashi looked at each other and sighed again, then their eyes filled with worry. This time the enemy was not among the shrimp soldiers and crab generals, but a beast, a behemoth. With the first emperor's means, either the island or the country was destroyed. Just two officials of the first emperor made them so embarrassed. It is difficult for them to imagine. If it would be terrifying if it was a senior cadre such as Thor, Nami, or the first emperor himself. Chapter 338 _ Sanji, I want meat. The troubles behind. Luffy's stomach shrunk immediately, and he looked helpless, looking like he had been hungry for dozens of days, with saliva dripping from the corners of his mouth. Eat, eat, eat in one day. Wait, I'll prepare the ingredients, and have a bonfire barbecue tonight. Sanji took a deep breath of the cigarette, squinted, kicked Luffy, and then began to discuss with the other fur tribes, planning to prepare some ingredients. That night, the bonfire was set up, and under the colorful starry sky, the warm fire began to illuminate the surroundings. The night was silent and silent. Appeared in everyone's eyes through Gecko's light. Sabo. Luffy, who was nibbling on the meat leg, looked at the person coming, full of excitement. Zoro and others were also a little surprised, because they knew that this man was their captain's brother and had met before. If so, they wouldn't be too surprised, but what surprised them most was the identity of the man. The General Staff of the Revolutionary Army. Just by hearing about this position, he knew how powerful he was. Moreover, such a brother, there is another captain of his own, the Five Emperors' Fire Fist Ace, the successor of Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world, which of these two brothers is not resounding in the sea? The most important thing is that it is the forces standing behind these two brothers. It seems that no one has changed, thanks to you for taking care of my little brother. Sabo smiled at Robin and the others and made a thank you gift. No way, our captain is like that. In an emergency, Robin said with a smile. Sabo, why are you here? Luffy bit his fleshy leg and looked at Sabo in confusion. Idiot, when will your IQ improve? Sanji sighed, and only this idiot captain would be confused. I was just passing by, so I came to see you. Patting Luffy on the shoulder, Sabo smiled. Oh, that's it. Luffy believed it on the spot. This idiot. Robin and the others covered their foreheads, full of helplessness. Thank you. If Luffy doesn't understand, it doesn't mean other people don't understand. For this, Sanji and the others said a thank you to Sabo very cautiously. He's my younger brother. Luffy heartily. Sabo didn't care, thankful that Luffy had found so many good friends. And Sabo's words were affirmed by everyone. For a while, everyone got to know each other, and the scene became more and more lively. The night passed, and in the blink of an eye, a new day came. The sun was rising, reflecting countless red clouds, sparkling, as if a spark had risen from the sea, and a breeze blew through, causing countless ripples. Suddenly, on the horizon, a gust of wind blew toward both sides, the clouds were penetrated, and a mysterious blazing feathered flame phoenix vermilion bird, leaving behind a fire, quickly disappeared in front of him. He was the leader, standing with his hands behind his back. Shinluo stood on Suzaku's back, his dark pupils like stars stared at the entire sea of clouds indifferently. His waist-length hair was simply tied up. Shinluo was wearing an ordinary windbreaker and a pair of black trousers, showing his slender body just right. It's been a long time since I left the first Emperor's territory, and this time is a bit long. The fierce saying in the sky, the fluttering clouds, the blazing feathered flame phoenix and the vermilion bird at the foot, coupled with the magnificent sea, the scene is extremely harmonious and beautiful. Shinluo or Nami, Perona, Fujitora, Kuzan and others. Kuzan looked at the man standing in front of him with his hands behind his back. Kuzan couldn't help but feel a tangle. He couldn't tell whether it was light or darkness. The most important thing is that in that small body, there is a power that makes him feel creepy. Compared with 5 years ago, this man has changed a lot. No one knows how much stronger this man has become in the past few years. Kuzan deliberately knew everything about this man, and the more he knew, the more his heart palpitated, because this man was literally dying when he cultivated. This can also explain the reason why this man can become the 5th emperor and has reached his current status. A blessing or a curse, Kuzan doesn't know whether his choice is right or wrong, but in these years, he has felt fulfilled, and that fulfillment is far from what it was when Marine was admiral. Now, there are tens of billions of lives living in the first emperor's territory. Compared with the world, this number is undoubtedly not much, but for Kuzan, this is hope. For this reason, Kuzan felt a sense of responsibility. His dream was to make the whole world like the first emperor's territory, and everyone could have a smile on their faces, so he joined the first emperor's territory. Because he knows that the world government has decayed, and only the territory of the first emperor can be reborn, and he wants to bring all this to the world. And this is Kuzan's ambition. Kuzan retracted his gaze and clenched his fists. He felt that his path became clearer. A few hours later, in the nameless sea, a giant elephant towered into the clouds, moving slowly with huge strides. It's here. Everyone packed up, then stood up, vaguely able to see the behemoth in front of him. Whoa! With a chirping sound, the blazing feathered flame phoenix vermilion bird under everyone's feet quickly flapped its wings, and in the blink of an eye, came to the front of the giant elephant. It's really big. Nami and the others narrowed their eyes, surprised. It will take several knives to hack to death. Touching her chin, Perona has the urge to look at her eyes. The giant elephant in front can withstand a few knives from himself. Boss Perona, calm down, it's scary. Napoleon's face turned green. By comparison, he was not as big as a single hair of this giant elephant, and the boss of Perona was already thinking about hacking to death with a few knives. Would it be so bloody? So arrogant? So ignorant? Like Napoleon, supernovae such as Jewelry Bonnie and Yeroj also had a stiff face and kept gulping. Sure enough, the realm is different. At the same time, with the powerful aura of Nami and the others, coupled with the dazzling light of the Flaming Phoenix and the Suzaku, Luffy, Sabo and others also noticed it in the kingdom of Zou. However, the Kai Feather Flame Phoenix Vermilion Bird did not fly to the country of Zuowu immediately, but flew directly in front of the giant elephant. The figure was suspended. Chinluo slowly fell from the Kai Yu Yanwang Vermilion Bird, and stood in front of the giant elephant out of thin air. His eyes were cold. The leaked killing intent rose into the sky, and a hurricane spread out. At that moment, the giant elephant stopped, and the entire sea area was silent. Not far away, Nami and the others subconsciously used their abilities in a conditioned reflex. Thunder boomed and fluorescent lights flickered. At this moment, no matter who they were, they felt a terrifying chill that made their hairs stand on end. This cold aura, like the Lingfeng fluttering in the 9 days, devoured in the abyss, radiated toward the whole world. Chapter 339 PFF'd. On the island of Zou, Robin's face was horrified, and he knelt on the ground trembling uncontrollably. Even Usopp, with a pale face, held on forcibly. The huge wind and waves drowned everyone, and under this breath, no one could maintain normal. This conqueror. Pressing the hat on his head with one hand, Sabo's expression was solemn and he felt a sense of relief. Here, the first emperor is here. Holding his shoulders tightly with his hands, Robin seems to have seen the ruler who rules the new world. I didn't expect that the first emperor actually came in person, and the matter is irreversible. Nekomamushi's heart beat faster. Even if it was so far away, he could feel the supreme breath, and in front of this will, even the sky had to surrender. After today, perhaps the country of Zou will become history. For a time, everyone felt a huge haze covering their souls, making it difficult for them to breathe and suffocated. The huge hurricane set off waves, making everything around it messy. Just by its momentum, it was so terrifying and frightening. Years of silence, at this moment, detonated the sea in an instant, and this will is still rising. Ka, bang ka ka. Suddenly, the originally clear sky turned endless black clouds, and in the dim sky, thunder and lightning flashed, as if it had collapsed, making people suffocated and unbearable. At this moment, that thin body, as if stepping on the whole world, is so domineering and unreachable. Roar. The mountain collapsed and the ground cracked, the huge and boundless giant elephant stopped, and the closed eyes opened again, but this time, there was a solemn expression in the eye sockets. The dust-sized human in front of him gave him a sense of danger, just like the Sea King, the King of Heaven, and the King of the Underworld, even more terrifying. This human being has the power to kill himself. A little uneasy, even after living for a long time, the giant elephant is not calm at this moment, because this human being has murderous intentions towards him, and it is extremely cold. Wow, human, I've never seen you before. Why do you have such a big killing intent towards me, Diaresis? Deafening, sound waves were generated, and Chin Luo's hair and windbreaker swayed. This sound wave is very powerful, and people with weak tolerance will even be shocked to death. Standing high above, Chin Luo stood in the air, and there was a trace of flames in his dark pupils, like an emperor, looking at the giant elephant arrogantly. The murderous intention not only did not weaken, but even became stronger and stronger. Raising his hand, the entire sky is torn apart, boundless energy is entangled, facing diagonally, a ferocious gun that can't see its head, sticks out its fangs, and the wind and clouds appear. The terrifying temperature soared, slowly condensing, the spear tip, the spear head, the spear barrel, endless, like an endless mountain range, laying across Chin Luo's head, aiming at the giant elephant's head. This magic spear is really too long and too big. Even if it is such a huge life as a giant elephant, if it is stabbed, it will be seriously injured on the spot. At this moment, in the kingdom of Zowu, everyone raised their heads and looked at the magic spear that covered the sky and covered the sky. Even in the outside world, everyone's eyelids jumped. Let's just say, it's easy for this giant spear to destroy an island. Human, I know you can understand my language. With such a powerful conqueror, you are the king of mankind. Please answer me, otherwise I will tear up the agreement with the king of mankind and fight back. The giant elephant roared and felt the crisis. He didn't know why the human powerhouse in front of him wanted to attack him. Because of the restrictions of the agreement, he could not take the initiative to take action, but now, as a last resort, he will tear up the agreement signed with the human king, not only to counterattack, but even to take action against humans. What the giant elephant said was good. Qinluo could indeed understand him, but so what? Arrogant and domineering, Qinluo stared coldly, expressionless, and pressed his right hand. In an instant, the whole sky screamed, and the boundless long spear, like a streamer arc, set off boundless power and fell towards the head of the giant elephant. Go down. King of mankind, you broke the agreement between me and the king of mankind. For this reason, I will automatically admit that the agreement is broken. The vastness of life, the giant elephant's front hooves slammed into the deep sea, lifted the boundless waves, and those huge pupils were full of anger at this moment. Of the giant elephant, the words of the giant elephant were all in the minds of Luffy and Momonosuke on the island of Zowu. Promise, the king of mankind, the agreement is torn up. Momonosuke's face was full of pain, and his hands tightly hugged his head. Luffy, on the other hand, was much better than Momonosuke, but he didn't understand what the giant elephant under his feet meant by the agreement and the human king. Momonosuke, are you all right? Chopper spun around in a hurry, but everyone was shocked by the giant elephant's roar, so except for a few people, they couldn't hear what Momonosuke was saying. Crack! Ah! The sea fell, the magic gun was like a broken bamboo, and the giant elephant felt dangerous. The endless elephant trunk sank to the bottom of the sea, pulled up suddenly, rolled up the boundless waves, formed a large galaxy, and slammed into the magic gun. Heaven and earth collapsed, the whole sky roared, an unimaginable disaster, like moving mountains and filling the sea, leveled everything. Diaresis, ka, ka. The heavy rain poured down like a waterfall, and the giant elephant's trunk cut through a scar that was deeply visible to the bone. In contrast, the divine spear cracked layer by layer, and finally turned into countless fragments, forming a meteor fire, and smashed on the sea. For a time, the meteorites and stars fell, and the whole undulating sea caused a large shadow, and the white mist that could not be seen at a glance rose even more. The figure quickly rose, looking down from the sky, although Nami's face was calm, but her heart was churning. This power. Whitebeard when he was young, he has the power to destroy the world. With a single blow, he can form a natural disaster and turn it into a natural disaster. Overturning the river and the sea, for a long time, one person and one elephant, the body shape is difficult to make up, the sea area around the two sides has sunk, and even a few rocks are exposed. Jiao jiaos. The blood was rushing, and the giant elephant's trunk was injured. He couldn't help but take a step back. He looked at Qinluo vigilantly with his giant eyes. And Qinluo, with his hands vertical, looked at the giant elephant indifferently, his eyes became more and more cold. Wow, the king of mankind, why do you treat me like this? Opening his mouth and roaring, the giant elephant felt troubled. He had lived for thousands of years, and he must have had wisdom, but now, he is also confused, and he doesn't understand why this unparalleled human king would attack him. All along, he has lived in peace with human beings, asking himself that he has never torn up the agreement. Qinluo was too lazy to answer the giant elephant's answer at first, but suddenly a flash of inspiration, he couldn't help but look at the giant elephant, a little different. The king of men, answer me. From the very beginning, this human king made the giant elephant a little palpitated. As soon as he came up, he attacked and didn't speak. He was simply a lunatic. Who wants to die unclearly? Chapter 340 _. If you hurt my followers, I will give you two choices, either become the guardian beast of my country and hand over the historical text stone tablet, or I will send you to heaven. This time, Qin-luo opened his mouth and set his eyes on the giant elephant. Instead of killing it, it was better to subdue it, just because of its size. If he accidentally hit his nose, even Qin-luo himself would be injured. You must know that this giant elephant is larger than the super-large Sea King. On this, if you expand it, it can survive hundreds of millions of people. Even if it is not like this, it can also serve as the facade of the first emperor's territory. What a hockey large and luxurious. To make the best use of it, Qin-luo had this idea. Don't be in a hurry to answer, I'll give you time to talk to you after I've cleaned up some ants. Qin-luo looked at the giant elephant coldly. After speaking, he directly waved to Nami and the others, but then left for the country of Zhou. As for the giant elephant, he was silent and fell into understanding and thinking. This human king, unlike any previous king, actually wanted him to surrender. This king is also more domineering, more greedy, more unreasonable. Very dangerous. Luffy and others are all here at this moment, including the fur tribe. But at the moment, everyone was tensed up, and the atmosphere didn't dare to pant, because the breath of the sky was rapidly approaching. In the blink of an eye, everyone raised their heads, and in midair, several figures despising all beings appeared in everyone's sight. Especially the figure at the head, although it didn't exude any breath, it was inexplicably shocking. Just looking at it, the heart tightened, and even the breath was full of suffocation. First Emperor. Luffy clenched his fists and looked at Qin-luo, almost unable to hold back. Beside him, Sabo and Shang also had heavy faces, feeling that there was a big mountain pressing on their shoulders, which was extremely heavy. Suspended in the air, Qin-luo glanced at everyone indifferently. Except for a few people, no one dared to look at him. However, the appearance of a few people was unexpected by Qin-luo. Looking at Sabo, Shang and the others, Qin-luo said, Nami, from now on, the Revolutionary Army will be the enemy of the First Emperor's territory and will execute the plan. Quote. First Emperor. In the second gear, Luffy flashed in front of him, punched Qin-luo, and launched an attack directly. Jet pistol. The airflow turned, and Luffy, who was not afraid of the sky and the earth, looked at Qin-luo with a furious face. Luffy. Everyone was shocked, and were disturbed by Luffy's impulsive personality. Luffy's attack came quickly, but for Qin-luo, it was just like that. Even though Luffy has become the fifth emperor now, and his strength is far stronger than when he was at the top of the war, it is still not enough to face the real powerhouse. Bang! With a dull voice, Qin-luo stood 3 feet off the ground, stretched out his right hand, and even held Luffy's fist directly. Luffy. How is it possible? Luffy's attack was caught so easily. Usopp screamed, some couldn't believe their eyes. Impulsive, self-righteous, stunned, and dare to be so arrogant without strength. If it weren't for your father, grandfather and brother, you would have died long ago. A look of contempt, Qin-luo pulled Luffy closer, and a barbed spear appeared in his left hand and stabbed it directly. Ding! Sparks flew everywhere, and at the critical moment, Sabo shot, holding the water hose of the armed package in his right hand, shot the barbed spear, pulled Luffy, and dodged aside. First Emperor, don't be arrogant, fourth gear. Breaking free from Sabo's pull, Luffy's powerful breath spread all over his body, disappeared in the blink of an eye, and shot Qin-luo again. Luffy, don't be impulsive. Sabo stared, his figure disappeared out of thin air, and he followed helplessly. The ground sank, and the dust all over the ground swayed. In midair, Nami appeared. After retracting her foot, she looked at Sabo who was standing on the ground, showing a trace of disdain. CGAC, General Staff of the Revolutionary Army, did your boss dragon not come? Very lightly, Nami crossed her shoulders with her hands and looked up at Sabo who stood up from the ground. Thor Nami. Standing on the ground, Sabo looked serious, and around his body, wind blades that ripped apart the atmosphere began to float, and a powerful conqueror rose up. Silently, disappearing, Sabo shot Nami directly. He knew that if he didn't solve the woman in front of him, he would not be able to get close to the first emperor at all. However, what was a little weird at the scene was that, except for Luffy and Sabo, the others on both sides didn't do anything, they just watched. Suddenly, the wind and sand blew, and several powerful auras came directly from the outside of Zuowu and appeared on the scene. PFF'd. Spitting blood and splashing, Luffy hit the ground heavily, splashing a stream of sand. The flames burned, and beside Luffy, a figure gradually condensed. He lifted Luffy and turned his head to look at Chin Luo, who was standing in the air angrily. Whitebeard pirates. Squinting, Sabo and Nami also distanced themselves, and the two sides were opposed to each other. Luffy, Sabo. Glancing at Chin Luo with hatred, Ace set his eyes on Luffy and Sabo. Ace. Luffy and Sabo were a little surprised by Ace's appearance. After all, at this moment, all three of their brothers were gathered together. Most importantly, following Ace, there are Phoenix Marco, Diamond Jozu, Foil Vista. Which one is not a famous powerhouse? Regarding the arrival of Ace and others, whether it was Chin Luo or Nami and others, there was no change in their expressions, because these people had already expected them. Marco, it seems that you didn't follow Whitebeard's will. I just ask, is the Whitebeard pirates going to fight the first emperor's territory? Chin Luo's question made all eyes on Marco converge on Marco. Marco, on the other hand, looked at Ace and nodded slightly, indicating that they would support Ace's actions. First Emperor, you killed your father, and you have long been inseparable with us. Today, I will kill you to avenge my father. A Ling Ran Haki attacked. Ace stepped forward and stared at Chin Luo with murderous intent on his face. Luffy is our little brother and wants to hurt him without stepping over my body. Sabo followed Shang and the others, and he looked at Chin Luo vigilantly with a determined look on his face. Ace, Sabo. Luffy wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, choked a little. His two older brothers still defended themselves so much, which made Luffy have an indescribable joy. Luffy, you are our younger brother, no one can bully you. Ace turned his head, unable to refuse, very firm. Yeah. With red eyes, Luffy gave a big smile and nodded desperately.